What we do here is go back. What we do here is go back.
And hopefully we are live. Good evening everyone, Mike here, Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To. It is Saturday the something, oh bloody hands in the way. 16th, thank you very much. 16th of September 2023. Hopefully you can all hear me and or see me. One of those two will be absolutely fine. Both of them will be excellent if you can. Let's have a look. Oh, Bob. Oh shit, sit up straight, here's Mike. Ah dear, I think he's on time. I was actually unprepared today, semi-prepared. Who would have thought it? Although I've got a semi-prepared. It's very muggy tonight. It feels very warm. I feel myself heating up. It's only 23.6 degrees Celsius currently in the studio with a humidity of 64%. And we are due a storm apparently tomorrow, thunderstorm, to clear the air a little bit. So, yeah.
But we've been promised so many. We don't know.
The weather report brought to you by Dido. Very depressing. Have you got your list, Mike? No, I haven't got a list, unfortunately.
But you'd like to say thank you to...
I would like to say thank you to someone. Kath's telling me. There have been some super chats come in, if I can find my mouse, there we go. So we had some super chats in from, who we got? We got one from Ugly Bob, Disco, Disco, Disco. And so he may say Disco, 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 because Ugly Bob, bless his heart, this week sent this keyboard in to us as a gift. Thank you very much, Bob. This is insanity at its highest level. This is the Mechanique, or Mechanique, or Mechanique, however you pronounce it, KT68 Pro, with yeah, just a little splash of RGB going on here. So first of all, thank you very much to Bob for that.
And that one the week before last.
Oh, and also PayPal donation of £18.88 from...
We're not sure what their username is.
Oh yeah, not sure who their username was, but somebody sent a donation. I guess it was £20 minus the fees or something. I'm not sure, or maybe it's $20. I don't know, but it's £18.88. So whoever sent that, thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Well, we don't want to give out real name from PayPal, do you? So.
Yeah, the PayPal name is, what does it begin with?
J.
Begins with a J. So I'm not too sure, but if you're in the chat, bless you. It's very kind of you. And Truckfan542 is sick tonight. Sorry to hear that. Never nice when you're sick. Hopefully you feel better soon. Where else? There was another super chat. I know, Lucky Man. Join supporter.
That PayPal.
Doesn't say how long that is for. Oh, well. Anyway. And Shrek OC, $4 super chat in there early. Thank you very, very much.
You're going to tell the bad news about the super chats?
Yeah, the bad news with the super chats.
For me.
Yeah, well, kind of for everybody. Unfortunately, for some bizarre reason, IFTTT, or if that, no, yeah, if that then this, they've actually removed part of their tier structure. So unfortunately, the applets that I had set up, so it automated the RGB ball coming on, it's basically been taken away from us. So it's been hidden behind a paywall. So I've said, sod them basically. I'm not paying that much money just so I can get the disco ball working. So Kath has to get up now and physically turn it on. We were hoping to do it with the remote control, but the remote control has a range of about 3 to 6 inches, which is pointless. So Kath's gonna have to get up and do it, which is unfortunate because she got a bad back, and so have I a bit. So yes, anyway, but there we go. There's a super chat, and also Skystalker has now been a member for 24 months supporting us. Thank you very much. He says it feels like a very, oh God, why is that not scrolling? Scroll, gosh darn it. Oh yeah, Skystalker has been a member for 24 months. Excuse me. Drank some coffee and it's gone down the wrong way. My apologies. There's another super chat from Ugly Bob. And there is £10. He says, I went out with this girl the other night. She wore this really slinky number. She looked great going down the stairs. For those of you that aren't young enough, no, for those of you that aren't old enough to know what a slinky is, it was like a spring and it used kinetic energy and you could make it go down the stairs, etc. If you're not sure, look it up. YouTube. It's great for all those kinds of things. So yes, the disco ball is somewhat broken, unfortunately.
It's not broken.
Well, the app that controls it that we were using is somewhat broken. Such is life. It happens. Life goes on. We will continue. Ultimate Tech Hub says he's doing well, taking the day off to watch Mike build a PC. I won't be actually building a PC. This is just a This is just a parts list guide, because I've had a few people emailing me and messaging and whatever and saying, Mike, I'm trying to build a PC. This is my approximate budget. What would you suggest to build? So I came up with a kind of no compromises AM5 build for a modern platform. Before you all get in there in the chat, which inevitably somebody will at some point, and say, well, why not go with Intel? Why not go with AM4? Those are both fantastic options, but I do feel that Intel is going to be somewhat limited, as with AM4. There are not going to be any more, there's unlikely to be any more processors to come out on the AM4 platform. There may be a couple of oddball ones from China or something, or I don't know. They may come up with something, but it's unlikely. Effectively, the platform is kind of discontinued. They will continue making motherboards and processors will still be made, but their focus now is firmly on AM5. And actually the focus is starting to come off of AM5 and they're heading to look towards AM6, which may come sooner than we'd originally anticipated, which is a little bit of a shame. But as it stands at the moment, from today's date, this is probably the best way to go with the AM5 platform. There is going to be the 8000 series, which will follow on from the 7000 series, which is currently available. That is a given. We know this for sure. Whether or not the 9000 series or whatever they decide to call it for the next iteration of the platform, whether that's going to be on AM5, whether it's going to be AM6, as always, time will tell. And depending on how well the production runs go, whether or not they can actually make it work for that, who knows? It's basically a guessing game. Now, for those of you that haven't seen it already, I would actually strongly suggest go over to Jay's 2 Cents channel and check out the video we released today, which is basically his open letter to the PC industry about how it's basically falling on its ass. And I've said this numerous times that basically the high-end stuff now, all the modern stuff, to be fair, probably isn't worthwhile doing. There's very incremental upgrades, and as we've seen over the last couple of weeks, well, months in fact, with the latest graphics cards, RTX 4060, 4070, and also on the AMD side with the 7800 XT and the 7700 XT, it's basically more of the same. Essentially, the previous generation from 2-3 years ago kind of is the better value for money. And it seems that is the way with processors as well. AMD processors, AM5, if you go for something like a 7600X, you might as well kind of go for a AM4 5800X. There's not a great deal between them. For games, there is some uplift. But realistically, if you're already on a relatively high-end AM4 platform, there is absolutely zero reason to upgrade as things stand at the moment, unless you are a very lucky person, you've got some excess cash you want to burn and you just love PCs and you're an enthusiast and you want to build up a new PC, go for it. Knock yourselves out. Put up with all the strange, weird stuff that happens with modern chipsets and platforms and yeah, knock yourself out. But I will preface this, or whatever you want to call it. Essentially, if you are on a 11th or 10th or 11th gen Intel, or you're on AM4, realistically, unless you have a specific desire or a specific need to upgrade, say something's broken and you're changing the platform, there is absolutely zero, and I repeat, zero reason to upgrade your system with the current offerings that are available from both Intel and from AMD. You will not be doing yourself much of a favor, and you're basically wasting your money and potentially your time if you're looking for a instantaneous performance hit, which you just simply will not get, unless obviously you're doing benchmarks, in which case, yes, you can say there is a significant difference in some areas with benchmarks. But if you're looking for that kind of really snappy feeling that you used to get with a new PC platform, you ain't gonna get it. Simple as that. It's kind of got to a peak and it's very hard to get past that. Yes, Gav?
Sanjeev asks, AM5 is ending, what the hell?
Well, AM5 will obviously end at some point. The
Begun now, is it? Really?
Yeah, it's that same thing with Intel, which is what they found with when they went to the LGA socket, is that there's only a certain amount you can do with it, and if you need to make any changes, you basically have to change the entire platform, which may or may not happen. Now, it does seem that potentially the next generation of processors, or AM6, does appear to be on a different socket, but that is open to speculation. That isn't really supposed to be around until 2025, 2026. So yeah, we are in that very weird place. We are currently at, well, approaching the end of 2023, depending obviously when you're watching this. If you're watching the live stream, then this is exactly where we are. We are almost getting towards October, but yeah, who knows? We are a year and a bit into no, are we a year? Yeah, I think we're a year into AM5 now. So potentially the clock is ticking, maybe another year, maybe 2 years left in AM5 as a platform. It will obviously continue as there are people at the moment that are using AM3 and possibly even AM2 platforms out there that are watching this, they go, Mike, what are you talking about? I'm still using this, it's absolutely fine. And that is kind of the whole gist of it really, that if you've got it, it's working, it does what you need it to do, there literally is zero reason to upgrade, other than the fact that you enjoy what you're doing, you're an enthusiast. Like car people, they go out, do upgrades, maybe change the filter box on their car, get a new performance exhaust. It won't change the car performance dramatically, but it's a little something. It's something that enthusiasts like to do, and very much like what we do in the PC community is upgrade just because we want to upgrade, not because there is a tangible upgrade value in terms of performance. That's right, Flame. My thoughts exactly.
Have you had an AIO Springer leak recently? What's wrong, Flame?
Have I had an AIO spreader leak recently? No. I don't think I've ever had an AIO Springer leak, other than if I've been deliberately messing around with it. I've had a pump die. That has definitely happened. I've had pumps get clogged up, but I don't think I've ever actually had one spring a leak. I think that is an extremely unusual thing to happen, unless you are either shipping it or you've knocked it or some kind of user error, I want to say. Well, anyway, I don't know.
If you had the money, would you do a Threadripper build?
No. No. If I had the money, would I do a Threadripper build? No, I don't. I'm like that. This is the whole reason why this channel started, really, is because we appreciate that money is a thing. Someone has to acquire it somehow, whether it's you, whether it's your family, a friend, a relative, whatever. Someone's got to earn that money somewhere along the line, and to waste it more than is necessary, I feel personally, is a waste. That's just my philosophy. Kath is actually twerking at me for the super chat. Thank you, David Aiken, for the £5 super chat. Thank you, Kath, for the twerk. Twerk it, baby.
Help in my back.
David says, shout out to our friend of the channel, Colin Hilton. Yeah, Colin, it's been quiet today, the last couple of days.
Okay.
Spoke earlier, he's not feeling well and can't join us, he's stuck in bed. Oh, get well soon, you legend. Colin, all the best. All our thoughts and prayers are with you. Feel better soon. Bless him.
And Sang Helios.
Who?
Sang Helios.
Sang Helios. I can't see that. Oh, Sang Helios. Mike, should I upgrade my Ryzen 7 3800 XT? Not really. It depends if you... I'm just going to go over old ground, but if you've got the money and you have the desire, then do it. The 38... did you say 3800? Yeah, 3800 XT is still a great processor. Really is. The 3800, well, the 3700, 3800 and 3900 are all excellent processors. The 3600 is starting to show its age ever so slightly. But I would still say if you have it, there's no massive need to upgrade, really. Most games now are very heavily GPU dependent, unless there is a specific patch like we've got with Cyberpunk, where there's a new patch available so it will utilize more cores. It's a very much a niche case. Niche case? I got someone else's teeth in tonight.
Steve Larkin.
They're not Steve Larkin's teeth, they're definitely mine, but, well, they could be.
Super chat.
Steve Larkin. Hello, Mike, Kath, and all in chat. Just escaped casualty to be here. If you know, you know.
We did the same.
Yeah. Yeah, I escaped casualty, very much so. David Andrew says Dad upgraded his cards very minimally, usually just a 500 CU in a V8. That's more than enough. Riley's coming with a super chat as well. Thank you, Riley. My eyesight's getting worse. It doesn't help looking into a freaking light bulb thing. Doing my upgrade tomorrow. My spring cleaning is almost complete. O'Reilly is one of those individuals where everything has to be done meticulously, and
Keep thinking that's Poppy crying. Is that?
Bless his heart, he's going right to town on this. He's got his upgrade parts ready to go, but he's been going through his other boxes. You know those boxes we have, like the 4 I've got here with just basically loads of junk in there, which you know at some point you'll need one day, but you probably don't need all of it. But we don't want to throw it away. So you go through your drawers, sort out all your things, bunch up a load of cables that you don't want or don't use, and chuck them out. So yes, thank you, Orale. And Sky says, I hear that Starfield is getting a patch to spread the CPU load over more cores. That wouldn't surprise me. The thing is, I don't think it really needs a patch as such, because it is essentially a console port. So consoles have got, what, 8 cores, 16 threads, I'm not sure. Actually, is the PS5 and is the Xbox Series X, do they have hyper-threading? I honestly don't know. I know they use AMD chip, but I don't know what the actual kind of the configuration of them is at all. Truck fan, have you had a PC breakdown in a thunderstorm? Well, we're actually really lucky here in Bristol that we are in a kind of...
Or unlucky if you like them.
Yeah, we're in a very kind of relatively flat area, but we're surrounded by the Welsh valleys. Then you've got Gloucester and, well, yeah, I suppose we are in a little bit of a dip. So the weather generally tends to kind of pass over us and accumulate more in the valleys, Gloucester, that sort of area, and possibly further down south. So we generally tend to escape a lot of it. We've almost got our own sort of microclimate, very similar to the Cardiff setup, whereas Cardiff is because that is coastal as well, and we're relatively coastal. The kind of weather for Cardiff is quite nice generally, but then it goes into the valleys and it gets a little bit worse. So yeah, we are very similar in that respect. We've got our own kind of, yeah, our own little microclimate, which isn't always great. It's mostly like looking up through a kind of Tupperware box. If you're not sure what Tupperware box is, look it up.
Flame.
So there we go. Advent Avenger says, the only thing I dislike about the Ryzen 5 7600 is that it's stuck at 47 degrees idle. My Intel processor could idle at 29, which was impressive. That is also something as well. If you are considering upgrading, if you've previously been on a 9th or 10th gen processor, maybe 11th, or certainly for AM4, you're relatively used to kind of quite stable or what I would consider normal temperatures. So as we've gone through from the very early kind of Pentium days into probably the first one, yeah, definitely the first of the Ryzen chips, probably AM3 before that as well, we were used to relatively kind of normal behavior. When I say normal, if your processor isn't doing a great deal, it's just sat there, you're on your desktop idling, or maybe you've got a few tabs in Chrome open, maybe watching a YouTube video or something, you would normally see your processor being relatively idle, down to kind of something like 800 megahertz, just tootling along, doing its own thing. But because of the way that the industry works and everyone's looking at benchmarks and all that kind of stuff, it's one of those things where gradually, rather than with the rest of the world where everyone's going green and trying to save energy, modern processors and modern chipsets, they use efficiency, or they have the ability to be very efficient, but they choose in their default state to not be. And what I mean by that, they are very kind of spiky in terms of temperatures and voltages and usage, etc. So even just like wiggling a mouse on some modern systems can send your CPU clocks through the roof, whereas the reality is it doesn't require that. So in order to have a snappy feeling system and lower latencies and all that kind of stuff, all processors now are they're literally just like waiting, chomping at the bit, ready to launch into action. Whereas previously it seemed processors were a little bit more laid back in that regard. I'm guessing that's probably a lot to do with things like faster memory, SSDs, where the data is kind of much more instantaneous. Whereas previously when we had hard disk drives and slower RAM like DDR5, etc., it was a slightly more laid back affair. So it was more chilled out. Older systems tended to be more like V8s, whereas modern systems tend to be like 2-litre turbos. So yeah, it's not a brilliant analogy, but hopefully you understand where I'm coming from with that. Thank you for the super chat, Mick Woods. Bless your heart. He says he's late tonight, rewound and watching at 1.5x.
And Matt Andrew.
Bless your heart. What's that? Matthew Andrew?
Matt Andrew, yeah.
Matt Andrew. Hello, Kath.
No.
Oh, Can a 13-year-old laptop bottleneck on today SSD data drive? I'm not entirely sure what you're asking there, sorry. Can a old 13-year-old laptop bottleneck on today? Yeah, and well, an SSD would make a 13-year-old laptop a little bit faster. But in general, there's always going to be some bottleneck, whether it's the data throughput, whether it's the amount of RAM, the amount of memory. There's always going to be something which is going to be holding a system back to some extent, especially when it's an older one and you're mixing old and new parts. I wouldn't say it's going to be one of those things which is detrimental, because modern SSD pricing has come down to very much commodity pricing, so it's very cheap and very effective at what it does. So even if there was going to be a bottleneck for the actual data throughput, I think it's still a justifiable and probably an essential upgrade. Rick H says, I will always be Intel. I always thought I was always going to be AMD. I started off early doors with Intel processors, then went AMD, Intel again, and up until the last year or so, pretty much 100% AMD for the last 5-6 years. Other than the odd video making a PC and that kind of stuff. But mostly I would stick with AMD, especially for the AM4 platform, which I feel is still excellent. But the modern AM5 platform does really make you kind of consider your life choices. At least it has done for me. I think that is... Rick H says, I have DDR3 1600. I've not used DDR3 1600 in a very long time. I think the last time I had any of that I was using in anger was probably with my FX 6300, and maybe I think I had an 8300 as well. Truck fan with your mental questions. Have you had a PC explode? Yes, I have.
That ain't even the mental one.
When I worked in the shop, there quite often you'd get it actually, where someone would come in, they say my PC doesn't work, it won't turn on. So the first thing is you'd put it on the bench, plug in the power cord, press the power button, and generally it would go bang. And quite often I'd get someone else to do it. And actually, Kath will vouch for me, quite often if I get that sort of situation here, I hate the sound of electrical explosions.
So you get me to do it.
So I get Kath to do it. In fact, fun story, I once installed an electric shower, and I'm not a qualified electrician or a plumber for that matter.
But we were allowed to do it in those days.
But you could do it back then, and because Kath was on maternity leave.
Oh, on maternity leave.
What? I know you were on just on you were earning less, weren't you?
Didn't.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, sorry. Kath was getting sick pay because she'd been at her job long enough. I didn't, so it came down to one or two of us who was going to turn on the shower for the first time to see if it went bang or not. So yeah, it's always consider a choice. Like, do you get paid sick? Yes. Right. You're doing the dangerous stuff.
Romance isn't dead.
There you go. O'Reilly says, I am AMD and happy. I think that's the that is the way to be. If you're happy with your platform, then it's a great thing. It really is. O'Reilly says, Ugly Bob, I will refrain from comments AM5 making AM4 look good. It kind of does. And when we get into the actual PC part picker list we've got, and I'll explain some of the parts choices, there is going to be a point where there is going to have to be some form of reflection. So this PC, which I kind of spec'd up, is going to cost you the best part of £800. And this is just for the tower itself. This isn't including Windows license, although obviously if you're a regular, you'll know you can get that from premiumcdkeys.com/Mike's Unboxing for an extremely healthy discount on regular prices. But ultimately, £800 for the level of performance, there are going to be significant savings to be made if you want to go with AM4. So you'll be using DDR4, so that is going to be inherently cheaper by a relatively considerable margin. Processor-wise, you can get a very, very similar performance for about £35–40 less. Motherboard prices from AM4 are arguably significantly better. There are some reasons behind that because of the extra traces needed, the extra working needed, the phases on the VRMs for the new AM5 platform, and the same goes for Intel. So there are things which are, it's like, the analogy for me again is very much like custom water cooling versus an AIO or a decent tower cooler. All three of them do basically the same job within margins of each other, but one's going to cost significantly more than the other. So when it comes to a value proposition, there's clear winners. When it comes to aesthetics, open to interpretation for the individual. When it comes to longevity, again, that is potentially where you're actually putting your money where your mouth is. So yeah, it depends your type of use case scenario, really. It generally does. Did I miss a super chat just now while I was jabbering away?
I don't think so. It's Mick Wood, wasn't it?
No? Okay, sorry.
Let me double check.
If I've missed any...
Mick Wood's the last one.
Cosmo, I will
is
find
the
it.
RX.
Is it at the bottom?
Ish, up a bit.
Okay, just a quick one I noticed there from Dave Aiken. My 7600X idles at high 30s, low 40s. They're easy to cool with a bit of tweaking. Unfortunately, that is the problem with the AM5 platform, I think, in my opinion, is the fact that we are very much used to with AM4 and also for Intel 10th and 11th gen that you could kind of go to the shops, you could buy your motherboard, buy your RAM, buy your CPU, your cooler, etc., and not go absolutely crazy on it. You could put it all together and without really much fuss at all, you could just get it up and running and it would be acceptable. Whereas with 13th gen, definitely, and AM5, it's very much that the out of the box experience is, I would consider, subpar. There's been very, very little optimization to the AM5 platform, in my opinion. And generally, as we've seen previously, months ago, motherboards from Asus and Gigabyte, I think it was, were very aggressive on voltages to try and maintain that stability out of the box, which can really harm the life of your components and give you extra heating, which then you have to dissipate. Now, if you're in a relatively cool climate, like we are here in the United Kingdom, pretty much 90–95% of the time, it isn't too much of a problem. But if you're living in sunnier climes, such as our good friend Mike from Ultimate Tech Hub, when you live in warm places like that, basically your swimming pool is going to double up as your CPU cooler. Or at least it would be good if you could. But that is going to be where it's going to be problematic for some people. But I do agree with Dave there. My 7700X, which is currently in the PC behind me, 360mm rad, you'd expect it to be quite cool. But even that, with the stock settings, this would idle at like 50 degrees up to 70, just idling, with spikes up to 95. Whereas now, with a little bit of tweaking, I think the liquid temperature currently is at 29 degrees Celsius, which is a little bit warm for here. And the CPU is typically, at the moment, the CPU is running a single core load, which is OBS. So it is hitting it a little bit harder. And the temperature at the moment is 42 degrees Celsius during a stream. So that's not entirely bad. We've also got some heat coming from the graphics card, which isn't hot enough for the fans to kick in yet. So there is some heat accumulating. Anyway, moving on. Cosmo, let's see if I find it, sorry. Cosmo with a K. How very modern. Hi, Kath.
No, I've got a little bit more on that.
Okay.
It's the RX6800.
Yeah, this is a really good question, actually. So Cosmo's question, for those of you that are listening on the podcast, is the RX7800 XT worth the price? Now, this at the moment is a very much it's kind of like almost like a pragmatic response. So there's pros and cons to it. If you look at a single point in time, i.e. now, and if you're looking at buying a new graphics card, brand new, in a box, with a warranty, the 7800 XT actually does compete relatively well with what is on the market. Having said that, in some instances, it can do quite poorly. So if you're looking at 1080p or to some extent 1440p gaming, It's actually not too bad. Sorry, Poppy's looking at the window, Babs. Go away, Poppy.
Oh, mean.
She'll come up on the table now. She knows the camera's rolling, so she'll be like, oh, I'm going to strut on the camera. She's going to come straight over.
No, she'll give my chair a good scratch.
Where was I? So yeah, 1700 XT. So at the moment in time, it's actually not too bad. And you can tell it's actually not too bad because of the fact that NVIDIA have been forced to reduce the price of the 4070, which then also gives you some potential issues because the 4070 for some gamers is going to be the preferable choice of the two, with the prices being kind of neck and neck at the moment. Here in the UK, you can pick up the MSI Ventus 2 RTX 4070 for £529.99. If you're looking for a RX 7800 XT, similar sort of spec, you'd be looking basically between £480 and £500, give or take. So for an extra £30, for some people, the RX 470 might be the preferable choice due to the fact that ray tracing is going to be considerably better, and it does appear to perform better in 1440p and 4K gaming. Whereas with the AMD card at the moment, it does seem that it's ideally suited for 1080p, very high settings or ultra settings, but as you start moving up to those resolutions, that is when we start seeing things like that reduced memory bus really starting to hit it a little bit harder than you'd expect. Which also brings the question is, should you just go and buy an older RX 6900 XT for very similar money, which is available quite often for that sort of price, or even a 6800? That is possibly an option as well for sometimes up to £100 less for reasonably similar performance in 4K and 1440p. At 1080p it gets kind of decimated a little bit, but the memory bandwidth there, the 256-bit bus, does definitely help older cards, especially when you're raising the resolutions and textures and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, is it good value for money? Well, actually, what was the exact question? Let me just refer back to that.
You can put it on the screen.
It is on the screen. I can't see that, my eyes. So the original question, is the RX 7800 XT worth the price? It's very much debatable. I think they've priced it slightly high as the launch price. No doubt with AMD, as they always do, never ever buy a launch price card. It's a massive mistake. And being that the GPU market is essentially dominated by NVIDIA, I think it's something like 80% NVIDIA, 20% AMD. Something bizarre, like the odds are stacked ridiculously. So an NVIDIA card generally is going to hold its value better. So that is another thing to take into consideration. It's the same with the car market. There's some cars which hold their value really well because they've got excellent resale value and they're desirable vehicles, whereas others lose an absolute ton of money straight, literally as you drive them off the showroom floor and even a couple of years later. So yeah, is it worth the price? I would say at the moment, no. I couldn't say 100% yes, it is worth it at the moment. If it was to drop maybe £50, I think it would be a very serious contender. But when you have the 6800 non-XT at sort of 380, you've got the XT version for about 430. It's kind of like, do you want to spend an extra £100 for basically no real obvious improvement other than a little bit of extra headroom in ray trace titles? I don't know. Stuart Cleary, does your PC do what you want it to do? If yes, no upgrade required. Don't be a victim of consumerism. There is definitely that to it. It's always going to be that kind of toss-up between consumerism, desire, availability, and perceived value. And like I've said over and over, if you like doing PC upgrades, you like building a PC, you have the spare cash, or you have cash available, or maybe you can sell off your old parts and you enjoy what you're doing, then do it. It's like eating. You pay for nice food because you like the taste of it and you enjoy the process. realistically, you could just go and knock up some beans on toast and you probably would be just as satiated, or you wouldn't need to eat anything else and you'd save an absolute fortune. But do you want to have beans on toast? Every now and then you want to treat yourself with that nice steak or whatever. Sorry, vegans out there. Steak or other protein-based mushroom products. Paul Lamont, how you doing, Paul? My current AM build setup runs really well, plays games, and it does what I want it to do. There you go. And Poppy, dude, seriously? Dude, where is that? Oh, there we go. Advent Avenger, that's what I was looking for. My AM5 machine without a GPU cost me 1,200 Canadian rupees. I just stick my old GPU in there. So 1,200 Canadian dollars. I think the exchange rate for Canadian dollars to UK pounds is somewhere in the region of about 2 to 1. Maybe slightly more, maybe 3/4 to 1. No, the other way around. You know what I mean. So around about £600 without a graphics card. So that's quite an investment. And actually that isn't that dissimilar from the build that we'll be showing shortly. Oh, keyboard's turned off. Turn on, you swine. Oh, actually, did I put it in wireless mode? Oh yeah, I did. It's working. There we go. This keyboard's actually nuts because it has got... We found this out today. Dave Aiken, bless his heart, came around today, and between him and Kath, they actually worked out how to use the keyboard. I couldn't even read the instructions, let alone the font on the keyboard. But there does appear to be 3 buttons, Z, X, and C. And there's a very, 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 very small... In fact, actually, I'm going to show you on the overhead camera just to prove how small it is and that I'm not just being a bit of a dipstick. Although potentially there is that to it. So can you see that? Is that going to focus eventually? Oh, come on. Pay all this money for cameras and it ain't bloody focus. Right, if you look at the X and the Z, sorry, the Z, the Z, the X and the C, you might just be able to see there is, I don't know if you can see that or not, there's a very small Bluetooth icon and a 1, a 2 and a 3 next to it. And the V button says, allegedly it says 2.4 gigahertz. I'd be damned if I could see that. Maybe you guys can. The keyboard is nuts. So yeah, you press the function key. Poppy, stop moving the mouse. Crazy fool. There's Poppy. Is the camera going to focus on her now? Autofocus. Gosh darn it. Well, I don't want to really focus on cat buttholes, but anyway. It could be worse. So anyway, if you can see that, that is what I had to work out. So if you press the Z, the X or the C and the function button for 3 seconds or more, it goes into Bluetooth pairing mode and you can switch between them. So you can have basically 5 types of connectivity. So you can go wired, USB type C. You can go 2.4 gigahertz with a wireless dongle, which is in here. Or you can have 3 different Bluetooth devices connected. So your PC, your phone and maybe a tablet or something. You can switch between the two. It's kind of nuts. There is actually another cool feature of this, which I'm not sure if it'll work because I haven't installed the software. But if you can, yeah, you can see the monitor over there on the side. If you press this button on the side, this is the emergency pornography deletion mode. So you press this. Oh no, I haven't installed. Oh yeah, typical is do it. Oh, it's done on that monitor as well. So it's doing it because I've got multi-monitor set up. It's going between the two. So yeah, basically, if you want one of these, maybe if your parents come in the room or your wife, girlfriend, significant other, whatever, and you're looking at something that you shouldn't be, just go and it's gone. Excellent stuff. It's minimized so they can just click on it and get it back up. But anyway, you get the general idea. So it has got the emergency button for removing whatever's on your screen. It basically minimizes anything. So whether it's OBS, a browser, your emails, whatever. What do you think about that, Poppy?
You got a thing right across her face.
Oh, yeah. Let me move around you. She looks very contented there. Yeah, you like the mouse mat, don't you? The mouse mat was from our good friend of the channel, William Bodie, which I haven't seen in the chat tonight, actually.
Yeah, William Bodie's in.
Is he? Excellent stuff.
I was wondering where he was, but he came in. Then Poppy came on screen.
Bless you all. Bless you. Truck fan. This is going to become one of those meme things, isn't it? Truck fan. Have you ever had a PC start smoking? No, but I had one that had a vodka problem. But yes, I have.
Poor Lamont's head. I gave it a patch and it's okay now.
Yeah. Stick a patch on. Yes, I have. I've had a PC that started smoking. I've actually had a few that have done that. Some have been self-induced. Some have been just where something plugged in wrong. Mostly in the early days of 12 volt RGB and 5 volt RGB. That was the most telling time. There was, I did a review of the GameMax. I'm trying to think what the case was. There was a GameMax case that had the infinity mirror on the front. I can't think what it's called. It wasn't a Trooper. I can't remember what it was now, but yeah, one of the GameMax cases, and it had the infinity mirror effect on the front. And I was doing a build for someone, and I plugged in a cable, and I plugged in a 12 volt header into a 5 volt one, and it just, yeah, magic smoke coming out. I could see the wire melting. I'm thinking, I'm sure it's not meant to do that. That's not an RGB effect that I selected. And yeah, I basically killed, I think it was it was the CPU cooler, I think, that actually melted. Or at least the cable to it. And I was like, oh, great. That's not worked out well. Skystalker says, I'd love to see see what percentage of enthusiasts used Intel versus AMD. I would say that at present, for our particular group of enthusiasts and PC users, I would definitely say there's going to be a higher proportion of AMD. Because of the type of channel we are, where we look at more budget orientated stuff. And generally, over the last 6-7 years or so, arguably AMD has filled the niche of the budget market very, very well. Look at some of the cool processors, the 2200G, the 3200G, the 3400G, the 200GE, 220GE, the Ryzen 1200 that started it all really. 1400, that was great. You've also got processors such as probably the 4500, 5500, all still great processors and actually still viable. But Intel have had a few kind of minor wins. The 12100 was pretty decent, but still quite an expensive platform to buy and very much locked down. So the performance you get out of the box is basically, that is it. End of the story. Which, the 10100 as well, that was really good.
Angel's in.
Hello, Angel.
What's Poppy looking at? She looks curious.
What is she looking at? I don't know. I think she. What are you watching? Is
Herself on the screen.
that you? Are you actually watching things, or?
She's just in a daze.
She's determined to knock that box off,
But
I
it
swear.
matches her collar.
It does actually match the collar.
Our Wolfman pointed out.
Anyway, let's go. Actually, I wonder if I can do that. Can I do a poll?
Poppy can do poll.
I can't do a poll. You'll have to do it, I think, if you can.
I can't do one. I can't even.
There used to be a button you could do that.
I can't even do people's comments moderating.
Let me see if I can. I'll see if I can. I'll do a poll and we can find out what the deal is. If I do mics, I'm not sure if this is actually going to work. Mike's unboxing. Nope, that's not me. That's some other dude.
Question. Would you build a website for a major brand with more than 200 million users using Wix? What?
No, screw you.
What is that?
That's an advert for Wix on the channel. Right, there we go. Poll, start a poll. Let's have a look at poll. Right, poll. As an no, I can't spell enthusiast. What CPU are you using? You need to get involved with this. You need to click on this when it goes live. So we'll do AMD. We'll do Intel. Add option. ARM. There's going to be someone's going to use ARM. Both. If I put, yeah, this is for your main PC, okay? Let's do start poll. There you go. There should be a poll there. So, what CPU are you using? So, I'm using Intel for my video editing PC. I'm using AMD for the other one. So, let's see. Oh, I can't even vote. It's gone. Oh, there we go. So, I am using both. Okay, I can see that there is already a very, very strong lead developing for AMD. So there's a lot of people that are using AMD only. When it comes to Intel and AMD, seems to be third place, and absolutely nobody is using an ARM processor. To be honest with you, if you're using an ARM processor, you probably don't even know it. So if you're using a iPhone, iPad, a Mac of some sort, a recent Mac, or a tablet, Android tablet, there's a really strong chance you're using an ARM-based processor. I wonder if the ARM percentage is going to start going up very slightly now. Nope, still no interest. Nobody wants ARM. Nobody did. That is why the Windows RT tablet basically died a death, because there was just zero interest back then.
Clean the screen text, please.
Will do. Clear. I need to work out how I can link that clear button to a thing.
I'm not even sure what's in my PC. You built it.
Yeah, Danny's Birdshed. I'm pretty sure. Danny's Birdshed. I got a feeling that is a Ryzen 5, either 4500 or 3600. I'm thinking. I'm not sure. But thanks for joining us on the live stream, and hopefully the PC is working well. Mark Barry says, I'm tempted to do an Intel build one day. The thing is with Intel, their biggest problem, or the kind of hurdle to entry, even though Intel probably got the market share in terms of CPU sales by volume, they clearly have, because they're a huge company and they sell many, many CPUs to very different places. And obviously, a lot of the business contracts are heavily Intel favored. It wasn't up until very recently that people like Dell was basically an Intel system. You couldn't really get an AMD processor-based system from Dell and various other places because there just wasn't a call for it in the market. It's taken a very long time for the kind of the office environment to get on board with AMD processors in the workplace.
Mark C.
Hi, Mark C.
Well, it's got Mark. I can't pronounce the surname.
Okay.
Have you reviewed?
Let's get rid of that poll. I didn't see, where is that Mark C? Sorry, scrolling. Have you reviewed the, no. The 7500F I have not reviewed as of yet. I have seen pricings listed for it, but it does seem to be dramatically close in pricing to the 7600X, which I feel at the moment in this particular market, you are better off going with a 7600X as a higher performing processing unit than the 7500F, which is slower, doesn't have built-in graphics at all, so for fault finding you lose out on that, and it is somewhat of an OEM product. So warranty wise, I think you only get a 1-year warranty, whereas with AMD desktop processors generally I think you get 2 or 3. So it's kind of for the extra money and the availability at the moment, I would probably go with the 7600X. Stuart Cleary says ARM is the dog's kahunas. It can be. definitely. Sai Vang, sorry if I've pronounced that badly. AMD is powerful. They are as strong as Intel already. Definitely, yeah. I think the processor market, this is going to go into tinfoil hat territory. I should have a tinfoil hat made ready for the stream so I can put it on when these moments arise. Tinfoil hat time, I think we could call it.
Nobody would wear a tinfoil hat though, really.
No.
Copper.
True. Because AMD and Intel, and for the large part Apple, all three of them are majority owned by the same companies. So you've got your BlackRock, your Vanguard, State Street, there's a couple of others as well. But they are the ones that own the primary amount of shares in all the companies. So there's never going to be a point now where one of them is going to be a runaway success in one area or the other. Because why would you do it? It doesn't make any logical sense. And because obviously the shareholders and the kind of the finance companies, the finance departments of these companies are the ones which pull all the strings, and basically they allocate resources to different areas, marketing, research, even down to like basic things like the rubbish collection and stuff like that. The finance people are the ones that control the market, and the finance people have a duty to make money for the investors. So if they were to have a runaway success with a particular processor, it's not in their interest to do that. So they will significantly either hamper the performance or increase the price to make it so that there isn't a logical, clear choice of which way to go, because it's not in their interest to create that kind of market. They are about making money for the shareholders and themselves. That is what they're set out to do. That is all they're designed to do. The product is basically just a means or a device to facilitate what their goal is, which is generally making money.
No TTs or not? How much do you think?
Where do we get to? I can't see that. Truck fan, I'm gonna have to read this because I've just seen it and I've laughed, so I've got to get it out of the way. Have you ever seen a UFO, foreign intruding object, in a PC? I've seen animals inside a PC. I've definitely seen spiders and woodlice or woodlouse. I've seen those numerous times inside of a PC. Poppy's been inside a PC a couple of times where I've done B-roll and been filming it, and she decides that she likes the inside of a case.
Even in a stream she's done
Yeah.
that, actually.
Definitely.
It's a bloody phone, I hate it.
Ugly Bob says ARM are going to be the mutts nuts. They potentially will be, but again, because of the ownership side of things, it's going to be really difficult for them to do anything other than be a kind of also ran. But hopefully they will.
No TTs still?
I can't see no TTs.
How much do you think the 7800 X3D will go for on Black Friday?
Blimey. That's proper crystal ball stuff. There we go. No TTs. To be honest with you, I don't even know how much it is now. I have no idea how much the 7800 X3D is. To be honest with you, the X3D range of chips I've got absolutely zero interest in. And realistically, I would say, in all honesty, if you're watching this and you are someone who has limited income or a limited budget, whatever, don't buy an X3D chip. It is absolutely pointless, really. Unless you have a specific goal with that X3D chip, there isn't enough software written at the moment to make that worthwhile. If you are playing a professional level game, or you want to play professional level games and you absolutely have to have the fastest gaming processor, then of course, go for it. But if you're just a regular dude, you bought your system, the X3D is kind of pointless. The extra cash is nice, but realistically, the difference in buying a regular 7800 or 7700 7700X versus the X3D, you'd be much better off putting that money towards a better graphics card. You could probably go the next tier up on your graphics card, which would actually give you tangible improvement. Whereas most games these days don't rely overly heavily on processor at all, let alone having a 3D cache on it. Yes, there are going to be exceptions to the rule, and if you watch Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed, if you go through enough slides, you will find that there is going to be the odd game which stands out as being very suitable for that kind of architecture. But it isn't going to be overall. And there will be actually some games which just will run worse. So don't get too hung up on it being extremely well marketed and being a kind of premium level product, because the reality is it isn't going to give you a great deal. Perhaps if you're on the AM4 platform, then it does make slightly more sense because it is kind of like the premium tier. But again, if it's just for gaming, yes. If it's for productivity, you're better off getting a processor with more cores, like the 5900, 5950, and the same goes for the 7800X3D. You'd be better off in productivity tasks going for 7900 or 7950 or something along those lines.
Nighthawk. Help.
Nighthawk, hang on for fast forward, hang on a sec.
Capital letters, help.
Nighthawk.
It's KN1 GHT.
Let's see now, scroll back up. Help. I'm using MSI Tomahawk B450 Max motherboard. What CPU can I go up to? You can go up to 5950. That is the kind of top of the range there. Whether or not you'd want to, I don't know. This is, again, one of those other kind of raging debates. If you've got an older B450 motherboard and you get the latest and greatest processor, you are certainly not going to get the best out of it. You'll get the majority of it out of it, but going to like peak level probably isn't going to be as beneficial if you're gaming, maybe getting the next graphics card up in the tier. If you're on something like a 3600, for example, on your B450, and you want to go to something like a 5800, that would be a decent improvement. But you are going to be losing out on PCI Express Gen 4, so you're not going to get the benefits there for your graphics card, for the chipset in general, transfers, all that kind of stuff. And you potentially might be slightly hampered in your ability to overclock your RAM. You may struggle to get anything over XMP 3200 standards. So certainly things to consider, but it depends what it is you want to do. But officially, you can use a 5950 if you wanted to. Stuart Cleary's birthday, is it?
It was the same day as Poppy's, wasn't it?
Oh yeah. Happy belated birthday, Stuart Cleary. And also, well, that was last week, wasn't it?
I think so. It was William Bode's worked out, I think.
Oh, right, okay. Welly Bob's answered there, 5950X. Truck fan. Oh God, here we go. I kind of feel my heart sink every time I see a queue. Have you had a PC part come damaged in shipping? Yes. In fact, we've made a couple of YouTube shorts on that, and we've discussed it in streams before. I've quite often had PC parts come damaged in shipping. Even, well, yeah, pretty much for as long as I can remember, they've come damaged at times. I remember, I think my GameMax F15, which is Cav's PC now, one of the fans was broken off the hub when I received that. We bought a PC from Game, which was reduced. That came through, that was obliterated, that had a fan smashed off it. I've had some Thermaltake stuff come through, which has been damaged in transit. I've had, yeah, there's been many CEX, obviously. Processors have come through based in like a cardboard bag.
Cardboard bag?
I know.
A paper bag?
No, it was a cardboard bag. It was thicker than paper, but only just. So, yeah, many damaged things, unfortunately. And funny enough, actually, I had this conversation with somebody because of that short this week, and it's somebody who actually works for CEX. So if you're watching, thank you very much for getting in touch. And they are in a kind of an upper level in the actual store, but not in the group itself. And as part of their kind of open questions and suggestions section, they actually suggested that they don't send out things in paper or poorly packaged these days. And the reason that has been given, I'm taking this as being the official line across the entire CEX ethos, is that CEX have made a conscious effort to reduce the use of plastics. Now, me personally, I think this is an absolutely ridiculous idea, because they are just bowing down to the whole green agenda thing. Now, I won't get started on that because it's a long and nuanced thing, but what you have here is, it's not like the clamshells for CPUs are single-use plastics, because you can take a processor out, you can put another processor in, you can ship it back. So these are clamshells for processors which are designed with a purpose. And the purpose is to protect a CPU in transit. And they've been designed specifically for that task. They cost very, very little. And in fact, I would imagine very, very few of them get thrown out, because most of us enthusiasts will take your processor out of the packaging, you'll put the packaging back in the box, do the whole Tetris box thing, pack it all away, because if you ever want to sell the processor or give it away or whatever, you're going to have to find a way of sending it, which will generally be in that clamshell. So for them to turn around and say that they are reducing their use of plastics to just tick a box, I think is absolute horseshit. There, I've said it. I believe it is. It's
better to chuck out that whole CPU than what it is.
That is what I was about to say. The reality is, if you don't package up a processor or a stick of RAM properly and protect it in transit, there's a very strong chance it's going to get damaged.
You think of all the manufacturing that goes into making that CPU.
A processor contains a lot of very dodgy components in terms of if it goes into landfill. So if there's anyone from CEX watching and actually has got any say in this at all, and has actually got a brain inside their head, please don't bow down to this bollocks green agenda shit and reducing a piece of tiny plastic which actually has a genuine use and can be reused, putting it into a fucking piece of cardboard is just insanity. Why would you put a processor in a piece of paper to post it out? You're going to damage the processor. You're not helping the environment, because there's going to be another truck collecting it from my house to ship it back to your stupid ass to get a refund or a replacement and go through the whole process again.
Well, I've got our big studio lights on to unstraighten.
So have a word with yourselves. Don't be morons. Don't just go, oh, green agenda, no plastics, because that is a stupid thing to do. And actually, it beguiles me how a company such as CEX with...
excuses for dumps within eco packaging drives me crazy.
Like, how does it get to the point where you've got... Obviously, you would assume educated people that run these companies, and they're sat in their general meetings or their board meetings or whatever, and they're discussing things they can do to help save the planet. At some point, some morons come and say, well, how about we send processors out in a piece of cardboard or in an envelope? At some point, surely someone with a brain would have been like, well, actually, our returns rates on those is pretty bloody high, and then we end up throwing them out. So not only do we lose the money that we've given the customer for trading value, we've also got to ship it back. We've also got to do all of the stuff on the system. It's all that crap, and basically we end up sending it to a recycling centre, which then costs us money, or it just goes in the skip if it's not worth recycling. So it's like, please, just like have a word with yourself. I totally agree with trying to save wasting plastics and packaging and all that kind of stuff, but do it where it makes sense. Don't do it on something stupid such as a actual reusable piece of plastic for sending out a processor, because ultimately it's just pointless. You're literally just ticking a box. I'm sorry I'm getting pissed off about this, but the whole stupidity of people just all going rah 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 about the green thing. Be green for a reason. Don't do it to tick a box. It makes absolutely no sense. Oh
There was
dear.
a question I forgot.
So sorry. Let's go back and see what you guys think about it. Because it's just mad. Rick H, I hate the words eco and green. I do, because they're just so hijacked by so many different places and so many different agendas. And it's like, you have to do it because it's seen to be good. It's like, do it because it is good. Don't do something because it looks good. Do it because it is good. There's a significant difference. I've said that for a long time.
How do I change the RGB? Oh, it's gone.
Ugly Bob, absolute oh shit. It's just stupid. I'm sorry.
Kieran asked, can you take a look at the laptop you put in Discord earlier?
Alright, okay. I did have a brief look at it actually, that looked quite interesting. I like Ugly Bob's comment there, but I'm not allowed if I'm... am I allowed to say that? Have I already clicked on it? No, I haven't. No, I shouldn't say that.
Oh, they funny.
Rick H says, ESD damage for sure. Yeah. Assholes, lol, they are. Willie Bob, no excuses for damp squibbing, eco packaging drives me crazy. It's just pointless. Sky Stalker Row might drop the F-bomb. I can't help it. It's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous. It happens so much in the world though. It's like,
You've got to think of all the parts needed for a processor, where they've all been shipped to
Yeah.
a factory to be made.
yeah, making a
It's fast,
processor
put in
is
a
like
paper bag,
an extremely hard thing to do.
and probably use
If you
quite a
look
lot of
at
resources.
Intel's manufacturing facilities, or AMD's, or what's the one in Taiwan? I can't think what it's called. Anyway, you know what it is. The fabrication plants are like sealed, locked down, sterile. There's so much that goes through, and there's already so much wastage in silicon where if there's defects that they can't be used, etc. There's only so much that can fit on a physical wafer size. So to deliberately try and jeopardize the transit of a processor is just nuts. Like Intel and AMD, obviously they are forward-thinking companies. They want to save money. They don't want to give you ridiculous amounts of packaging if they don't necessarily have to. If you look at their processor packaging, they've actually started becoming a lot more minimalist these days. But they still use the plastic clamshells because they know that they're good at what they do.
Just like using diesel generators to charge batteries at Glastonbury.
Yeah. Bandy says, I might go and loopy, and Kerry Holzman sends his regards. Bless him. Bless Kerry Holzman.
You got me a good night's sleep this week.
He did. Daniel's Birdshed says, same goes for everything box ticking. Yeah, box ticking is just, there's no point of it. Chris Hartford, how you doing, Chris? Got a 3600X from CX, shipped in a bag, but my last two CPUs from them came in a plastic clamshell and retail box. I think where possible, they like I should say, to the staff that work at CEX, the ones that actually are kind of switched on and they know what the likelihood of these things going wrong, ultimately they are the ones that are going to send out things probably in a pretty decent way. And also, kind of to some extent, they are securing their own future for the sake of a little bit of plastic. Because you buy from CEX or you buy online, secondhand shops, etc., eBay, whatever, you expect the seller to send something to you and to actually arrive in a usable condition. And when it happens, that's the expected norm. If you have a processor that arrives, now actually the processor that I had arrive from CX came in a cardboard box about this big, a little bit smaller than a shoebox, a little bit bigger than a hard drive box, with basically just shredded paper inside of it and the processor thrown in the middle. So ESD static precautions not being taken care of. The processor was banging around and basically there was about 7 or 8 bent pins. So you get the processor. First of all, it's bad for the company because obviously there's going to be people such as myself and other people on Facebook, whatever it is, who are going to post and say, look what CEX sent me now. So it gives them a bad reputation for being poor service. So that means that people are less likely to buy there, which then directly affects their profits. So for the sake of using a bit of plastic, it's just nuts. It's nuts. So thank you to the good people at CEX who work there, that package this stuff up and actually go against what management are saying and send it out properly or in some form of decent protection. Thank you, genuinely. Because you're the people keeping that company afloat, believe it or not. Kieran, I can't actually look at your Discord thing on here because I haven't got Discord on this PC. Unless someone can send me a link, in which case I probably could do. Stuart Cleary says, I'm having a Peroni and like Moretti, it is fluoride free. Good for you.
Stuart's also done super chat. That's what the disky ball is
Oh,
for.
thank you. Mick Woods, well said, Mike. Thank you, Mick. I'm not looking for congratulations or anything on it. It's just, it's common sense, surely. Surely it's common sense. But that is something which is sadly missing in a lot of our mainstream these days. It really is. I hate to say it, but it is true. Stuart Cleary is coming in with €20. Thank you very much, Stuart. Says, thanks, Mike and Kath, one of the few Saturday Night Live YouTubers. Lovely jubbly. Thank you.
And then Shrek underneath.
Shrek OC, I'm very much on board with the agenda to reduce single-use plastics. The key word being single-use.
But shouldn't it be the companies stop using it rather than blaming us?
I don't think they shouldn't blame the end user, because ultimately if you get sent something in single-use plastics, it's not your fault because you're the consumer. But then having said that, single-use plastics aren't necessarily single-use, because like we get sent stuff on a daily basis from companies around the world and also locally, whatever it is. So if I get sent something such as, let's say, good for instance, this keyboard that Ugly Bob sent, sorry Poppy, that got sent in basically, mind your claws, that got sent out in basically a plastic bag. But I will then use that plastic bag, I will scrunch it up and I'll use that as packing material for something else I ship out. And I'd imagine there's other people that when they get it back, they'll be like, oh, a plastic bag which is ripped, what can I do with that? Well, what you can do is when you send something out next, you can put that in there and you can use that as packing material. So what was originally a single-use plastic envelope for sending out mail is now some actual packaging material, which can be reused over and over and over because plastic pretty much lasts forever. So it's not about, is it a single-use plastic or is it long-term plastic? It's about educating people to actually use plastics in a sensible way. And just because maybe a plastic bottle, maybe you finish the drink with it, do you throw it in the scrap? No, of course you don't. You can keep it because you can put water in it, or you can use it in the garden to water your plants. There's all kinds of things you can use a bottle for. So it's about making sensible decisions about plastics and how you use them, rather than going, oh, single-use plastics, or oh, it's not a glass bottle. It just takes common sense. Truck fans gonna use the loo. I should put a question in. What colour is your toilet paper? Is it triple ply or twin ply? Is it quilted? Truck fan, have you ever seen a Western Digital hard drive in a retail box? Not for a very, very long time. Not since the days of PC World. Kieran says he sent the link for you to send.
I've put it in the chat.
Oh, right, okay. Right, let's...
And I've made Kieran a moderator.
Okay, cool, yeah. Ugly Bob says that stuff that comes from AliExpress can sometimes look like it's been in a rugby scrum. It does. It has, to be fair, it's travelled quite a distance. David Underhill says, my state government rabbit on about using green energy, including electrifying their freight trains. The number one freight train, the freight is coal, going to India and China. Hey! Alright. Yeah. Alright.
Okay, Baba.
She's got her foot stuck in me watch strap.
Oh, Grumpy hurt you. It's okay.
Sorry. I do apologise for anyone who has an animal
stressed.
and they're stressed out about that.
Okay.
Poppy! Come on.
Got your foot stuck.
See, that wouldn't have happened with a iWatch, Apple Watch.
Oh,
She's like, I'm not getting near him now.
Oh, it's okay, Maisie.
Oh, the other cats have come in now.
They've all come in. Oh, you gonna come and say hi?
Where are we?
Okay,
Discord
that's
link.
just hurting.
Truck fan,
Hey.
have you had any bloopers? Yeah, just did. Blooper. RSPCA. Ugly Bob, F you might come off. She does not like that watch. No, she didn't. Cat bloopers. Yeah, that got stuck in there.
Oh, bless her.
David Aiken says, I'm pleased to see CPUs in smaller boxes, though I don't that don't come with a cooler. Hate the massive empty box with a tiny CPU in it. Is dumb. Far less on a pallet. Massive wasted money on freight shipping. Yeah, that's very true. The a lot of the newer, I think it was the Ryzen 5 3600s which came back onto the market. They were sold from Scan and other places, and literally they were kind of like about that wide, the packaging, about that deep, kind of that long, literally the processor, a little bit of thing. Very, very minimal packaging. Get the replacement cat. Got it. She's there. Just like see her head in the bottom.
It's alright, she's got a matching collar to match the box.
Snaring Poppy of your watch.
Oh,
I know, poor little thing.
Pops. See if she's recovered.
I was trying to help.
You okay, Baba?
Right, let's have a look at... can I do this? Yes, I can. Am I logged in anywhere? No, I'm not. Okay. Right, let's have a look at Kieran's potential laptop. And is that going to work? Stream desktop? Yeah, there we go. Oh, hang on. Let's go back to main a second and minimize that, clear that. Then get that screen back up. And then hopefully stream desktop. Hey, there we go. That's worked. Oh, bless her. Is she all right?
Yeah.
Good.
She's been pampered by Flame.
So here are HP 15 FB0020 Ryzen 5 5600H, 8 gigs of RAM, 256 SSD with a RX6600M, 15-inch, 144Hz screen, Windows 11, and that looks like grade B possibly. That doesn't seem like a bad price. I didn't look at the price until after. So currently they are selling for £345, which actually seems pretty good. What is the reviews? Only one, so nothing really to go on there. The only thing, well, the RAM obviously is going to probably want to be upgraded almost straight away, and the RX6600M is probably not going to be overly powerful. So depending on what games you're planning to actually play on it, and also it's got a small hard drive, so let's think about that. So 16 gigs of RAM is going to cost about another, I don't know, £30. A 1 terabyte SSD, which probably is going to be necessary, maybe even a 2 if games are going on there. So either sort of £30 to £60. So you might need to spend another £100 on that, possibly, to get the RAM and the hard drive space up. So that's going to take it to about $450. It'd be interesting to see what you could get new on the market for $450. I doubt you're going to get anything with a dedicated GPU. But having said that, the new 7000 series laptops have got pretty decent integrated graphics, and the is it the 6800H, I think, is actually pretty decent. But yeah, whether or not you'll be able to get the prices. But overall, seems okay. With CX, you're going to get a 2-year warranty, I believe. So at least it should last that long. If you can pick up some extra RAM cheap and you've got a drive lying around, then that is going to make the upgrade somewhat cheaper to do. But yeah, seems overall, the 144Hz screen is good. I'm not entirely sure whether or not it's going to be a IPS panel or a VA or even a TN. I would hope it's an IPS, or at the very worst a VA. If it's a TN, that's going to look pretty trash on a laptop. But then you can always plug it into an external. Yeah, £345. Clearly they're making a little bit of money on that, so You might be lucky and pick up one somewhere from like eBay or something, a little bit less, but then you don't get a warranty. So yes, that's a tough one. Very tough decision to be made there. I honestly, I wouldn't know which way to go. Having bought my last laptop, HP 15, which is a smaller screen, somewhat lesser spec, for very similar money, maybe slightly more, that does appear to be actually relatively good value. And I actually do regret not getting a larger screen on my laptop. I think a 14-inch screen on a laptop is, for me personally, is a little bit on the small side for 1080p.
Can't see those Bluetooth things on it.
Yeah, I can't see the Bluetooth logos or anything. I think mine's actually a 13.1 or something, so it is a particularly small screen on my laptop.
What's it on that?
Which I never use now because it's just not nice to use. Yeah. I wish I could say one way or the other which would be the preferential way to go on that, but I'm honestly not entirely sure. I haven't looked into them on the used market for quite a while. So Irie Wolfman saying it's a 9 millisecond IPS screen. So 9 millisecond isn't that quick. It should be fine though. Irie Wolfman says only one 8 gig stick. Right, so you'd have to take out the RAM to upgrade it. Yeah, that's a bit of a nose. Zorro says, how do I change the RGB color on my Asus Dual GPU? I've tried all the apps, it doesn't work. What should I do? You can't change it. The Asus Dual range, there's two lights, one which is pale blue, the other is like a pale pink, and that is the color that it is. You cannot change it. You can disconnect it though. There is a very small cable behind there, so if you don't like it and it doesn't match with your color scheme, you can just disconnect it.
Truck fan's off, by the way.
Cheers, truck fan. Kieran says it's only going to be playing World of Warcraft and Elder Scrolls Online. To be honest with you, World of Warcraft I think runs pretty much quite sweet on most things. Elder Scrolls, I'm not entirely sure. They're not really both games that I played, so I couldn't give you an honest opinion there. But yeah, it appears to be okay. It can't be terrible. Chris Hartford says look out for laptops with non-upgradable soldered-in RAM. That is something which I am very concerned about for laptops these days.
Hey, Mapes.
Skystalker says wow, that is cheap. Well, yeah, I guess it is. For if you went to buy it brand new, I'm guessing it's going to be at least £600, maybe £700. O'Reilly says, I'd rather have a laptop with an RTX 3050 than a 6500M. Yeah, I think the RTX 3050 would be a considerable jump in performance. Measy, what are you doing? With your damn cat autofocus on? Luckily it's not.
Do you want to go up, Flame? Zorro?
Right, where are we? Zorro.
It's quite high up now. How do I change my RGB colour?
I just answered that.
Oh, did you? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I'm like miles away.
Firestorm, what did I miss? I don't think he did anything yet. Stuart says, I once paid €3,200 for a Sony Vaio laptop in 2006. The fact it had a new Blu-ray drive at the time really bumped up the price. It died a blue screen of death after my dog knocked it down. Oh dear. Kieran said he's checked on YouTube, the SSD and RAM are easy to upgrade. Awesome. Good point. Skystalker, yeah, if you put a 3050 in there, it's not going to be the same price. Wild Bill's with us. Evening. How you doing? Ugly Bob says, yes, slam a like on the video. We need to get 69 so he can get another drink. I can't believe I just read that out loud. Oh dear. Thanks for that. Right.
Look at his last comment.
No. I haven't looked at the poll. How's the poll doing? So AMD is still leading the way at 67%, Intel at 21%, ARM at 1%. They got off the 0. Well done. And Intel and AMD is only 12% of the viewers. So yeah, that's interesting. Actually, if you're watching this stream and you're watching after the live, then drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what processor you're using in your PC, whether it's Intel or AMD, and actually put in there what processor you're using. So try and put the full model. So if it's like a Ryzen 5 3600, put that in there. Be interested to know. And if you're one of those people who has an absolute ton of PCs, list all of them in there if you want, all the processors. I'll be interested to see who can accumulate the longest list. I'm not sure if there'll be a prize for it, but certainly it will be interesting to see who has the most elaborate CPU collection. Right, okay. So I think we should get into the PC list actually, because we haven't even touched on that yet. So quick intro, obviously from the video title, I'm going to put timestamps in this actually so people can go straight to it. That would probably be more sensible. This PC, I strongly suggest you don't build it, is the honest answer. Unless you just want to build a PC for the sake of building a PC. If you're trying to save money, if you're trying to get value for money, this probably isn't the PC for you. If you're looking at building a PC with some sense of some longevity, potentially it might be worth taking a look at. So you have been warned, let's get into it. And I have to try and find it. Is there anything on there? I need to get rid of that, clear that. And let's fire up the other tabs. And there we go, brilliant stuff. Right, so we're gonna head over to the desktop now and I'll show you these things. I won't be able to zoom in too much on this stuff, so you might have to squint a little bit, but I'll try and go through it. Again, for the viewers that are watching this on the podcast, I will try and elaborate things so you don't have to rely on visual aids, which don't really work in a podcast. Anyway, let's take a look. So there is the Mike's Unboxing No Compromises Budget AM5 build. £790 approximately. I went slightly over actually, 32 pence over. I think the prices have updated. The prices always change. They are always in flux, so don't be surprised if these are different by the time you actually get around to watching this. But it's basically an idea. So processor wise, we've gone with the AMD Ryzen 5 7600X at 4.7 GHz, 6-core processor, 12 threads, and this has a TDP of 105. My gut reaction immediately, as soon as you get it, go into your BIOS and put on eco mode and reduce it to 65 watts. And also, if you can, use the curve optimizer and see if you can get it down to -20 or -30. That would give you much, much better results than you get out of the box. The processor itself, so currently if we look on Amazon, just have a look, I'm not signed in, that's good. So Amazon are currently selling this for £205. Which actually is basically cheaper than the 7600, which is currently £209, which is barmy. So if you are considering one of the two, the 7600 comes with a cooler, which is kind of useless because it's the AMD stock one. The 7600 doesn't come with a cooler, so you save a bit of money there, but you do get a faster processor, so it's got the potential to be faster anyway. Other than that, the core, the cache, etc. is essentially the same. The 7600 only boosts up to 5.1 GHz. The 7600X boosts up to 5.3. So again, if those things are important to you, single-threaded tasks, yada yada yada, then that might be worth considering. But it's cheaper, so you can make a 7600X a 7600, but you can't do vice versa, not easily anyway. You're going to need a cooler to go with this, so I've gone with the ID Cooling SE214XT. You can also use the Thermalright Assassin, which I believe is actually a little bit cheaper. So that currently is, what, £17. There are other versions available, so if you don't want RGB, you can get it for less than £15. With this running in eco mode and with the curve optimization, this could be absolutely fine to keep your CPU under control. If you're not going to be limiting the curve optimizer and the voltage, TDP, etc., then this is going to be a little bit on the loud side at times, but still very, very usable. Motherboard wise, this one is kind of a bit of a compromise, but not at the same time. The only compromise we've got here is the fact that it's micro ATX rather than being ATX. For that, we get £150, which isn't particularly cheap for a motherboard, but it does cover all the bases. So it's got PCI Express Gen 4 and Gen 5, I believe. You've got built-in Wi-Fi 6. You've also got Bluetooth. You've got plenty of slots. You've got USB Type-C. You've got 3 addressable RGB headers. Plenty of fan headers as well. So overall, a very nice little board. Currently available a little bit cheaper actually. This is the non-Wi-Fi version. So if you don't want a Wi-Fi card, you can save yourself £10 to £15 depending where you buy it. Amazon doing the Wi-Fi version for 150. This is 140. You get this from Scan. I believe you also get free shipping on this as well. Possibly, maybe not. But anyway, it is definitely an option. It's actually quite a nice looking board. It should suit for most builds. If you're going for a white build or a black build, or if you just don't care and you just really not bothered what it looks like, then it's fine. So PCI Express Gen 5 on there, on that top slot. We've also got an extra M.2 Wi-Fi if you want to add in one of those. Hyper M.2, and there's another M.2, so you've got 3 M.2 slots, plus the Hyper M.2 for, plus the M.2 for Wi-Fi if you want to use it. 4 RAM slots, USB Type-C, USB 3. You've got 4 SATA ports as well, and at the top there, CPU fan. There's a couple of RGB headers, and the rest of them are all down the bottom. You've got fan headers, RGB headers, everything you would pretty much need. The I/O is pretty good as well. HDMI and DisplayPort if you want it. BIOS flashback. If you go for the Wi-Fi version, you have your antennas there. USB-C, a couple of regular USBs there, and 2.5 gig Ethernet, which is quite forward thinking. So yeah, for the money, I don't think that's too bad at all. Going back to the list, for the DDR RAM, pretty much Corsair Vengeance is arguably the best value for money. You can spend more for better latency, faster speeds. Arguably it can make a difference, but in my opinion it doesn't make a great deal of difference. So £81 for 32 gigs Corsair Vengeance. If you want to go RGB you can do, obviously, or buy more, but I think 32 gigs is the way forward now. 16 gigs isn't really enough for some modern games, and being that this is a no compromises build, we haven't compromised by limiting to 16 gigs, and also you don't have so much issues if you want to buy more RAM, compatibility and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully that makes sense. 1 terabyte drive, you can basically go for whatever you want there. I've put a Crucial P3, that was the cheapest at the moment, around about £38. Can't go too far wrong with that, I think. Graphics card, gone with the Radeon RX6600, because I still feel that this is probably the best value for money at the moment on the market. If you want to spend a bit more, you can do, and you'll get incremental increases. For this system, absolutely fine. We'll pay 1080p, 1440p games pretty easily, as you've seen in the review we did of this not too long ago. It's not a bad card, as it doesn't have all the frills and multiple fans, but then again, it doesn't really need to, and it doesn't use a great deal of power, so it is a nice efficient unit. Power supply wise, we have gone with, I think it was the can you punch George? Power supply wise, gone with the 80 plus gold from Antec, the earthwatts, which is that one there. Remember that one there. 550 watts. You are looking at gold. It is based on the Seasonic Focus platform, so it's basically a Seasonic with a different label on it. We reviewed that again, so that was a pretty good choice. Power supplies at the moment, £60. It seems like a lot for what it is. We were picking these up for like £40, £50 not that long ago, but they are getting more expensive. So yeah, that is what it is. The case, obviously get whatever case you want. Because we've got a micro ATX board, you can go ATX or mini ATX, or micro ATX rather. So I've chosen to go with the Thermaltake S100. This is one of those cases which I have not built in yet, but I've done a build in the S300, which actually I really liked. And this actually got pretty much all the bells and whistles. Got a folding out side panel, glass, plenty of room to work in. Only comes with a crappy fan included, so you'd probably want to change that out. Nice lot of room there for a radiator in the top if you want to. USB 3 ports and a couple of USB 2s. Airflow is actually quite good, believe it or not, with the highly ventilated mesh in the very front. So if you don't like RGB bells and whistles, you don't necessarily have to see it if it's on your desk, as you can make out there. So, but that mesh there is really open. So if you've got fans behind there, they don't have any difficulty breathing whatsoever.
Got a cup of tea, Babs?
Yeah, I'll have a cup of tea. Fans, if you want to stick some fans in there, again, this is no compromises. So we have included fans, Thermalright TL C12Cs. Get a 3-pack for 15 quid, 5 quid a fan. Come on, can't go too far wrong with that, can you? And there we go, drinking. Right, so that I think is pretty much it. I'm going to have a look now, see what your questions have been, because unfortunately with that window open, I can't see what the chat has been saying. So let's have a quick look. Go away, I don't want to see that.
Not the poll.
The poll here. So, Anthony Hermans says hello. Craven Fox, long live the 2200G. Yeah, that was a cracking processor. Skystalker says in Canada, the AMD AM5 series includes Starfield. Yeah, we've got that in here. If you buy a Radeon graphics card or an AMD processor, if you buy the processor, you get the standard edition of Starfield. If you buy a AMD GPU, you get the enhanced or premium edition. O'Reilly says, not always free shipping from Scan UK. That's what I was going to say. If you are looking at doing this, at the moment, the case, the S100 from Thermaltake, it's bizarrely, it's on a today only deal. But it's been on a today only deal for ever, as long as I can remember. And I keep on seeing it, thinking I should get one. And if you buy that, you get free shipping. So if you buy the case with free shipping, which is cheap anyway, 35 quid, anything else which is on your order will come with it and will be free shipping as well. That's how it works. So definitely worth taking a look at that case. I'm tempted to buy one just to do this building. I'm in two minds because I want to do this build to this spec because I've got the majority of it anyway. The only thing I haven't got is the motherboard, which I will be buying. I am going to get that specific motherboard. I'm going to give that a run. I'm going to get the non-Wi-Fi version because I've got an M.2 Wi-Fi card here. So I am going to save myself a very small amount of money by doing that, but it's not going to be huge. So that is going to be something I'm definitely going to do. And I want to try the 7600X. I did have one before and I was slightly underwhelmed, but I think it's because I didn't have my settings dialed in correctly and I found it to do some weird stuff. My system, the AM5 system now, appears to be, touch wood, stable. I've worked out the problem, I believe, again, and it has been considerably better. So there is that to it. But we will see. But I do want to do this build. I want to do a micro ATX build because I haven't done a micro ATX build in forever. I can't remember the last Micro ATX build. I think it was the woofer speaker type case we did ages ago. So I really want to do a Micro ATX build. I have got the Tower 200 still, which officially is an ITX case, but it does support Micro ATX mountings. So potentially I might do it in the Tower 200. And I'm even considering replacing the Series 500 with the Tower 200 up here to see if I can live with the Tower design case, which I'm not sure if I can because of the weird I/O being at the top, but we'll have a look.
They can hear you.
Oh, wow.
What would you come in and say sorry?
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Come and say sorry.
Could they say they could hear him? No.
Yeah.
Say, what do you say, George?
Sorry for being too loud.
Sorry, our son is apologising currently and laughing nervously because he's been making a load of noise playing his games upstairs and we could all hear
I
him.
wasn't playing a game there. I was watching speedrun.
George is honest to a fault. He wasn't playing a game, he was watching someone else game. Doing a speed run.
If
Anyway.
you want to see what he looks like with his embarrassing little laugh, watch the Corona video.
Yeah.
What's a taste testing business?
Taste test, that's right. William Bodie says, I remember last week's stream, Mike,
I've still got all my windows open.
so many sides open.
I've still got them all.
She's still got them open. Yeah, there's still at least 100
You
tabs
drinking all
open.
that?
Yeah, go on.
Maisie is not going to get her foot stuck.
Old Man Withers says, I'm using the B760 version of that board. It's been solid. Well, that's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping some of the instabilities I've had with AM5 could potentially be down to the fact that I'm just using MSI motherboards. Now, for the longest time, as you will know, I've been somewhat of an MSI fanboy. And it's been kind of one of those things I've just stuck with it because it's what I know and what I like, and it's always been really good. So I'm thinking, as the fact that I do obviously unboxings, reviews, etc., it's sensible for me to try other motherboards and other platforms because that way I've got my own personal experience to kind of refer to rather than just parroting what other reviewers are saying. So that is something which I will definitely want to do. Try more AM5 motherboards on various different vendors, Gigabyte, Asrock, even BioStar, companies like that, just to see what they're all like. Nick Barnes says, can all M.2s be used at the same time? Currently, I am not sure, is the honest answer. I've got a sneaking suspicion you can, because Micro ATX boards generally tend to have less PCI Express slots and SATA ports. They often use the remainder PCI Express lanes for M.2. But I will find out, and I will put the purchase in, and when it comes out I will review it and we will find out the details. Hopefully it will be. I'm pretty sure it will be. Captain White's with us, says evening. How you doing, Captain White? Good evening to you, sir. Dutch Jan says 24 gig sticks. Yeah, 24 gig sticks I think is still a little bit of a premium price. It's going to be weird having 24 gigs of RAM or 48 gigs of RAM. We've been so used to the usual multiplier like 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, etc. Ugly Bob says, hi George. Thank you, Cam. Dutch Jan says, I think the 6600 is too slow for the Ryzen 5 7600X. Yeah, I'm tempted to agree with you on that, but for good reason, because the 7600, like a processor, is something which you generally don't tend to buy every upgrade cycle, whereas a graphics card, potentially you might. And especially where the prices are falling and dropping. So I could have gone with the 7500F, which would have been marginally cheaper. but then you might want to replace that a little bit sooner. When it comes to the graphics card, like I said, the 6600 for me, I personally believe is a very good pairing for pretty much any system, because most games are kind of GPU dependent. CPUs are going to be for the broader spectrum of things, so content creation, multiple tabs, gaming and streaming possibly. You can always have extra threads and extra CPU cores available. You don't necessarily have to saturate your GPU with your CPU. It's nice if you can, but then if you really wanted to give the 7600X a run for its money, you're probably going to be looking at like 4070, 4080 level performance, which is then going to make this a 1800 PC, which I think is not really what a lot of people want. If you're going to get into a new platform, you don't necessarily want to be splurging or spunking an absolute ton of cash. But this is giving you an idea of what you can do. This is basically the platform. If you want to spend more money on a graphics card, that's totally up to you. And it will be absolutely fine. So you could put on this, you could run a 4090 on this if you wanted to. But this is giving you a good base level platform to build onto. Can you turn that freezer off and on again? That high-pitched noise is driving me insane.
Don't you worry about my back hanging by a thread.
I need a new fridge freezer. The compressor seems to have gone on it and it's making a hell of a noise. There we go, it's gone now. Silence. So supposedly when you get older, you can't hear frequencies as much, but that frequency is really getting right on my chuffer.
Got too much time on your hands, why?
Yeah. Well, no, it's just I can hear it. Captain White saying there are another cooler options. Have a look, what is that? Oh yeah, the Thermalright Assassin. Yeah, there's tons of different versions of that. The Thermalright Assassin actually is a really good cooler. Wherever you want RGB, wherever you want white, black, whatever. There's loads of options. I like those a lot. Got a lot of time for those.
Will you turn into Cilla Black then?
Got a lot of love for that. Letters with us. Sorry I'm late, just woke up. No worries. Did I fast forward too far? Truck fan question, any bloopers while I was gone? Don't think so. Ooh. A letter says, I once had a Ryzen 3200G, but one of my cats slapped it off the workbench and the pins were bent beyond repair. I think, what did I do with mine? I was trying to get it out of a package and I opened it and it just went pew, flying and bounced. And I was like, oh my God.
That's okay.
Thanks, Kath, for straightening those out.
That's what you meant to say.
O'Reilly says 2200G are okay. I think my office uses them. Yeah, the PC I built for Motorparts where I work on a Sunday. They've actually, that's a 2200G in there, and that's been going in there since way before COVID kicked in. So it's good 4 years or so, maybe more than that now. So they're pretty decent life. Dutch Jan says, if I was going to AM5, I would put my RX6700 XT in it. Yeah, no reason why you shouldn't. It would run very nicely. Ira Wolfman says, while running general tasks, processor AMD Ryzen 5 7600X will be utilised 83.1% and graphic card AMD Radeon RX6600 XT will be utilised 71.7% at 1080p. Thank you very much. Tinnitus, Mike. No, it's not tinnitus. It's definitely the fridge. Fridgeitis, more like, yeah.
Ours is LG, isn't it?
David Aiken, Ugly Bob, please buy Mike an RGB Kitty themed fridge freezer from AliExpress. No, please don't.
Stuart Cleary says, my LG American style fridge is 18 years old and still going strong. I think ours is.
Ours is, yeah. Ours is LG.
2005.
Yeah, American style, and we bought it 2005.
No, 2006 I think we bought it because we didn't.
End of 2005, wasn't it?
It was 2005, was it?
We bought it in 2005 and moved in 2006, didn't we?
But it might have been one of the last things we bought.
Probably is one of those, yeah.
Because we weren't meant to have it because we had a brand new fridge freezer as it was. But it was such a good price, we had to. And our builder wasn't pleased because he'd done all the plumbing in of everything. And then he had to plumb the fridge in.
Skystalker says, I remember my first AM4 1700. It hated memory on the first Asus X370 board. Yeah, I remember that very well. I had the same thing. I had a Ryzen 7 1700X and a 1700, both on the X370 platform, the Prime boards from Asus, and that was, yeah, painful, very painful. Expensive lesson, yes, it wasn't great. Rick H says, that's why I do Intel, no pins to bend. I'm going to have to step in there with the old pins thing. Personally, I think that going from PGA to LGA on motherboards is an absolutely disastrous thing. I've said this before. If you look at anybody who's built a PC, and the amount of people that have bent a pin on a CPU, I would say is quite low. Because you tend to know that there's pins on there, so you've got to be delicate with it. And it's a processor, so it's like, oh God, be careful, be careful. Whereas the motherboard, you don't think of it as being that easy to damage. But their pins in the PGA are very, very, very fine in comparison with what we had on a processor. So processor pins were probably double the width, so stronger, whereas the ones on the motherboard now, not only are they a little bit thinner, they also bend, so they're constantly going like that all the time. So as it heats up, the processor expands and is pushing the pins down a bit. When it cools down, they're going back up. So the heat cycles alone eventually are probably going to weaken the springability of those pins, so that potentially is going to cause a problem. And also just literally dropping anything on it. Anyone who's had to take off one of those plastic covers off the top of an Intel socket, or now AM5 sockets, it's just, I literally shit myself every single time I do it. I hate it. Whereas previously with AM4 boards, it's like, yay, give it a good clean up, get the brush in there, give it a good clean with some isopropyl alcohol. Whereas now it's like, ooh, don't want to get near the pins, don't even want to look at the pins. And I don't think I would find myself buying a second-hand Intel board or a new AM5 board purely because of the pin situation, because they are super delicate. So I would love it. I would love it for AMD and Intel to go back to even a cartridge design. I would prefer over what we've got currently.
Mark.
The equalizer. Any reason why my Expo is 6000 megahertz in BOS, but in hardware info it's 3000 megahertz. That is because you're using DDR RAM, which stands for double data rate. So it's the RAM sticks report the rise and the full cycle, whereas motherboard software generally reports the kind of just the cycle, the single cycle. So it is right, but they're both right. And there we go. Shreko C, thank you for that. It says they can all be used at the same time, but the third one is only 2 lanes. Which realistically, 2 lanes, PCI Express Gen 4 2 lanes or Gen 3 2 lanes? This Gen 4 2 lanes are still bloody quick. That's going to be the same as 3 PCI Express Gen 3 times 4. Stuart Clary says, I would give my left arm to be ambidextrous. Truck fan, have you ever found coins in a PC? No, don't think I have.
So we found a weird one on Poppy's collar the other day.
Oh, we did. Yeah, found a very bizarre coin on Poppy's collar. Well, she's hiding now. She don't like me anymore. Rick H says, yeah, bent motherboard pins equals game over. It definitely can do. It can mean that, for sure. Which is not a good thing. At least with the CPU, you've got a kind of fighting chance with the credit card and a razor blade to try and level out the pins. Try doing that on a motherboard. It's basically impossible. Because on a motherboard, you've got to take into consideration it's bent down on an angle. It's designed to compress down. So if it's moved to the left or to the right or something, it's really hard to get it level. And the fact that it's got to meet up with a pad on the CPU, getting it just dead on the right angle is really hard to do. Whereas at least with a CPU, like the pin, you can kind of look at it and say, well, yeah, it looks like they're all in the same way that way. Turn it around, yeah, they look about right. You can put it in, and sometimes you can give it a little wiggle and it'll fit into the socket. Once it's in the socket, you're golden. You know it's happy days. So I think longevity-wise, the platform won't last long.
Especially if it comes from CX.
Yeah, if it comes from CX, you're screwed.
That's what our Wolfman said.
O'Reilly says, as far as I can recall, I have bent 0 pins on my CPUs since I've been building computers, and that is around 20 years time frame. I wish I could say the same.
Go up a little bit. Mark. I wonder when.
I wonder when would the AM5 motherboards drop in prices down. I don't think they will. I genuinely don't think they will. The trouble is, the whole point with pricing and marketing and all that kind of stuff is there is a kind of like a base level cost of what a motherboard will take to produce. Now, AM5 motherboards in general are built to a higher standard, or they require a more complex assembly. So DDR5 uses much finer traces, so they have to be isolated or insulated or whatever. So there needs to be, realistically, you need at least a 6-layer PCB for DDR5 to maintain a decent level of memory integrity for the signal. Also, as well, you've got PCI Express Gen 5 for the M.2 and possibly the graphics card, so again, more wiring, more signal integrity needed. Much like the difference when you go from a PCI Express Gen 3 to Gen 4 riser cable for vertical mounting. You can pick up a PCI Express Gen 3 riser cable like 20 quid easy, whereas a Gen 4, because it's a higher quality cable, or it has to be a higher quality cable, you're lucky if you get one for less than 40 quid. So there are going to be some things which can't get much cheaper. And also you've got things like better VRMs or more VRMs to kind of distribute the load electrically. So there's all kinds of things that are inherent of the design. So even if you go for the cheapest, most basic ass board you can, it's still going to be quite expensive because of what it is. And that is the way the market's going. We talked about this in last week's stream when we looked at the new Thermaltake BM3 smart power supply, which is their new budget power supply for ATX 3.0. And we said it's still like a £90 power supply, even though it's only a bronze and it's only a 750. Now, the power supplies are more expensive at the moment anyway, but ATX 3.0, because of the standards it has to adhere to, there is a certain level of complexity of the circuit board and the manufacturing process, even down to the wiring, the soldering, etc. It all has to be done to a much higher standard. So the entire platform cost is increasing as we get faster and faster processors with smaller and smaller interconnects, and as the kind of the nanometers for the processors go down and down and down, everything's getting miniaturized, and with that comes the complexity of actually assembly, which is unfortunate, but it is the way things are. So I don't think AM5 boards will necessarily get hugely cheaper. And look at B550. B550 basically, oh, there's Poppy at the window, started off at about 170, I think, to kind of £1,000. And now the cheapest kind of decent B550 boards are around about 100, 110. So they've only come down, what, a third in the best part of 3 to 4 years. So it's not great. Bobby Dora, come on. You have a sit down? I'll take my watch off. There we go. I am unarmed.
Oh, how her whole team came in to care for her when they heard her.
Yeah,
They
bless
haven't
her.
moved off the settee
Come
all
on.
day. They got matching colours.
It was that, Poppy. It was that you got caught on. Bad watch, good mic. Bad watch,
Good Grampy.
good Grampy.
Paul underneath?
Is that a name or is it underneath?
No, just Paul.
Oh, yeah.
I just built.
I just built my PC yesterday. Awesome. It is an i5 13400F, good choice, and RTX 3070. I am so happy because I built it with my own bare hands. I wish I'd used bare hands earlier when Poppy was there and I didn't get her caught on it. Bless her. Aw. Sorry. There.
This is a bit not safe for work.
This is, yeah. Dun, 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 dun.
You have to be Ron Jeremy. Do you want that Ali G moustache?
No. Wait, where to get to? Rick H says, I have never had a problem with bent motherboard pins. I was always so careful. I don't think I've bent one yet, but I have been ultra careful. And there has been, I always really struggle now, especially with those types of boards. Start off with the Intel boards. Taking the processor off of the actual socket. Because it's really hard to actually get your fingers in and actually hold it properly, and I'm always terrified that I'm going to drop it back on the socket because I don't want to damage those pins on the motherboard. Because the motherboard generally these days, for a lot of people, is going to be at least as expensive, if not more expensive, than the processor they're fitting on it, which is nuts. Especially if you think like, if you go for like an AMD system, say for instance like a 2200G or a 200GE or one of those lower end processors for like 50 quid. Then you've got a motherboard that it goes on which is like 100 quid. It's like, well, if I break the processor, I'll buy another processor. If I break the motherboard, that's a lot more money. Maybe I'm just in the cheap seats, I don't know. Truck fan question, have you had any kerfuffles with PC cables? What cables are the most kerfuffly? The ones I've struggled with the most so far have been the new 12-pin NVIDIA style GPU connectors. Not so much with those themselves. Well, initially when they first came out, they were really hard. So the 3060 Ti, I was there for ages, like trying to get this connector in. And literally looking in the connectors, like, was any of that bent? And again, because they miniaturized the connector, the pins were like, you could barely see them. So I was like, well, they look kind of straight. And try it again. And it got to the point where I got the extension, which actually Dave sent in, Dave Aiken, thank you very much, which actually, in fact, is still in there now. And I almost never unplug that extension from that graphics card. If I take the graphics card out, I take the cable out with it. For that reason. Because at the other end is just standard PCI Express 8 pins, which are a piece of piss. So yeah, I like those. Other kerfuffles, the usual one, which we all struggle with, and that's that EPS connector in the top, which actually, if you look in this particular PC, because we've got a radiator and fans there, trying to get into that connector because you've got the VRM cooler is nigh on impossible. So yeah, I don't like that one a great deal.
There's a kitty here.
Oh, Maisie, come on.
Come on, Granny's lap. You're going to knock
No,
the
all
camera
right.
off, aren't you?
Sorry about the captivity.
Captivity. It's a kitty ear, it was.
Truck fan question: have you had something fall out of a PC? Yeah, probably. Yeah, I'm sure I have at some point. Can't think of anything specific, but yeah.
Oh, sorry, Flame, I pinched your toe.
Captain White says, Intel method, lift up one edge with fingernail, no fingernails, then get a good grip. If you drop it, it's likely to fall back in place. O'Reilly says, Mike, you're in the best seats of the house to watch the kitty clean in. Unfortunately, yeah. Bless them. Rick H, USB 3 to the motherboard. Oh, God, yeah. USB 3.0 ports are... you can't really win with them. So if you've got a right angle connector, you're still probably wrestling. So in this instance, in this case, because the PCI Express Gen 3 cable is at the bottom here on a right angle, so trying to get the bend to go through the pass-through was like really snug in there. If it was somewhere else at the bottom, it would, well, yeah. It worked out okay because it looks okay, you can hardly tell it's there. But that is traumatic, whereas the USB Type-C is an absolute breeze. It's a more expensive cable to manufacture, but it does make sense. I can understand why USB Type-C internal connectors are a thing, because they are so much nicer to use. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, so I agree with that. USB 3.0, ugh.
Your face then.
Deathstroke, can't say I've bent something, but I've definitely pooched the socket on a B450 board when I started messing. Truck fan, have you sucked up any PC debris in your Hoover recently? Truck fan and his Hoover problem again. No, I haven't. No, it's been pretty good this week. I've been taking it a bit easy this last couple of weeks. I don't know what it is. Ever since Daisy died, it's been, I don't know, it's been a bit weird here. Bit like there's, well, obviously like there's something missing. And this, I think it's affected all of us, but slightly differently. And there's the weather, the cats, and just the way things are in the world. It's just, everything seems a bit like, just a bit dull. So I've been taking it a bit easy, chill out a bit, not rush into videos and making stuff. And yeah, just trying to, I don't know, just take my time a little bit more. Oh God, yeah. O'Reilly, I hate Molex plugs. The Molex pass-through, as sometimes the Molex pin is moved around inside the plug and it sucks. Oh God, yeah. Those are horrendous. Truck fan, question. Does Truck fan ask all the silly cues? I think you know the answer to that one.
Dave Aiken?
Good question.
Isn't it funny how Chunky Weenie was only in the stream for maybe like half an hour?
Yeah, Chunky Weenie is notorious.
And yet everyone remembers them.
I really didn't like the USB 2 cable on the motherboard where all the wires are separate on the front I/O. Oh yeah. In the very early days of, actually saying that, for well, it'd have been AC97. So at the moment, most of you are quite used to plugging in your HD audio connection on the motherboard, which is the 10 pins, well, one blanked off, much like USB 2. Back in the day when that standard first came out, it wasn't really a standard as such. And a lot of cases, especially I believe the Antec P160, that I'm pretty sure had it, where we were going to an era where there was AC97 sound on board and there was HD audio. And the two are wired very slightly differently. So the Antec P160 actually had individual pins. So imagine your motherboard connectors, like your reset and your power switch, imagine that for all of those connections in that tight little corner. It was horrendous. And USB was like that as well when it started. We are pretty much spoiled these days. I can't read that name because I wouldn't even know where to start, but it says Shalom from Ukraine. Shalom. What does Shalom mean? That means hello, doesn't it? I thought that was...
Oh, I thought it's their name.
Oh, is it?
I don't know.
Because Shalom is
I took it as.
Isn't that a greeting for...
Ugly Bob would know.
Greek?
Ugly Bob could read the real name.
Shalom equals hello. Yeah, but in what language? Isn't that what...
Ukrainian, I suppose.
What was Friday night dinner? What was their religion? Remember Friday night dinner with the dad who used to always take his shirt off?
Your hero.
Yeah, but what was their... Were they Jewish? Is it a Jewish thing?
I don't know. Yiddish usually means peace.
Yeah.
Bob. Hebrew, was it?
Hebrew. Could be. Yeah, just remember, because they're the guy who lived down the road with the dog who used to come up with Nelson, the dog.
What Nelson? It was Wilson.
Wilson, sorry. And he used to come up at the house and he'd be like, Shalom. And he'd deliberately try to use the lingo that they used, or would have used. I don't know. Jewish. That's it. Thank you, Chubby Sammy. That's what I was thinking. Jewish. Thank you. Craven Fox Body says New Yorker. I think there's a lot of Jewish people in New York. I think that is a thing, isn't it? William Bode is Shalom.
Hello, Jackie.
I can't. No, I don't know. I can't say that. I'm not going to try. David Aikens. Hello, Jackie. Is that what Shalom means? I don't know.
No.
Oh, saying hello to Jackie. Who's
No, hello, Jackie is the one who said in Friday Night Dinner.
Oh yeah, hello Jackie. Yeah.
It's hard work, Dave Aiken.
Hello. Oh. Kev 2427's in the house. How you doing, Kev? Oh. Thank you, Irie Wolfman. David Andrew says more Jewish people in New York than in Israel. Is that true? I don't know. I wouldn't disbelieve it, but you never know. Skystalker is saying to Dave, I thought I was the only one who hated the 5V RGB connector on Asus motherboard connector. I have it glued in because it kept on getting disconnected. Yes, I think it would be... I would personally like to see the 5V RGB connection changing in some way, shape or form. As much as it is functional and easy to replicate in terms of manufacturing process, I think it would be nice to see some form of, like they did with SATA. So with SATA connections, they were just pushing connections. Then they got to the point where they put the little metal clasps in as well, which held it in. And it was a really good system. It was almost impossible to have a cable fall out because they were literally locked in. It cost more money, and it was like premium boards that come up with it first of all. But yeah, I think that was it was a good way forward. But it's going to have to be one of those things where it's going to be like a joint alliance of all the PC manufacturers and component manufacturers are going to have to kind of get their heads around it, where it's going to be a nose as well, because obviously that is an existing standard which is in use. So yeah, I don't think it's going to be one of those problems which is going to be solved. And I think in the PC market in general, there's far bigger fish to fry than just your addressable RGB connection. But I do agree with Skystalker, and it would be nice if they had something in them so that they would latch. Even if they did something as simple as maybe a magnet or something. Surely there's something in the pins which you could put some sort of magnetic force on it so that they would be inclined to stick together. So yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, I think addressable RGB is one of those things which does need addressing, ironically. Oh, I know, talking of connections, there was something that I wanted to show you that has actually been delivered this week, which for some of you might be something you're very much interested in. For others, you probably don't care less. But if you like your PC to be white, and you like everything in it to be nice and pristine and white, this might be just up your street.
Wouldn't magnets affect the flow of data through motherboard though?
I don't know, potentially if it's a strong magnet it might do. But I think in general it's probably going to be okay. Yeah, I suppose it depends how strong the magnets are. Oh dear. Right. Thermaltake have just released these onto the market. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in last week's stream or not. If I did, I do apologise, but I'll do it again. Is it Tipex, says Bob? No, it's not Tipex. That would be good. Clear. Okay, so this is the new GF-A3 series. So if you've asked this before, you wondered, Thermaltake do a lot of different ranges of their power supply. So if you take the name, so you've got the tough power range, which is the kind of the premium thing. You got GF, and then you got A3. So GF is the G means gold, so gold rated. F, I don't think really means a great deal, but then you got A and then you got 3. So if you've got a GF3, that is a higher tier above. So the GF A3 has slightly reduced, I don't want to say quality, but it's got a different type of capacitor in there. So the GF3 range have got 100% all Japanese 105C caps, whereas the GF A3 has 105C caps, but they aren't all guaranteed to be Japanese. The primary ones, the most important ones for the 12 volt rail, will be 100% Japanese quality 105C caps, but some of the other ones where it's not as important, they will use potentially Chinese or other manufacturers. So there's a little bit of a cost saving going on there. PCI Express Gen 5, obviously. ATX 3.0, again, we talked about the economies of the new ATX 3.0 standard. Going to be expensive to make. Is that Kath?
Ukrainian
Cyclist.
says the question is 13 gen or AM5.
This is a tough question. I will come back to that. There's very nuanced. I'll get to that anyway. Anyway, so Smart Zero fans are nice and quiet. Main Japanese capacitors, also 10-year warranty, as you'd expect from a premium product. And another reason why these are a little bit cheaper, so slightly different fan. So 120mm fan on these rather than the 135 they use in the GF3 range. Also, the ripple control is a little bit less than in the GF range. So there's a few little things they've done just to make it come into a certain price point, which is about, I think it's about 3/4 of the price. But this, I think, looks absolutely amazing. I like this a lot. I've never been one for the whole kind of aesthetics for PCs in general, but I think this actually looks very cool. And it's even down to the fact that the fan inside is actually white as well, which no doubt will show up loads of marks, which is unfortunate, but there you go. And it is fully modularized. Is that focusing? I can't see. I'll have to wait. I think that has focused.
Yeah.
Close enough. So anyway, you get an idea of what it's about. So it's fully modular. You've got the 12 volt high power connector. You've got 2 CPU outputs for EPS. And then you've got, I think it's 3 graphics card outputs. So basically, pretty much any graphics card on the market, this is going to be absolutely fine for. I don't think there's any. I wonder if one of the Hall of Fame cards uses 4 PCI Express connectors. Is there a graphics card that uses 4 PCIe connectors? Let me know in the comments. You will be helping me out immensely, because I don't know. Obviously, this is a white power supply, so in order to fulfill the dreams of the people that want to have all of it looking Arctic, then all the cables are in white as well. The connectors themselves aren't. Now, I have been reliably informed there is a good reason for this, and that is because the plastics they use for the connectors, they have to use a certain type of quality, otherwise they yellow very quickly or stain very quickly. That is the reason why they've gone for black connectors. So yes, it is as white as it can be, but apparently if they use white plastics, something to do with the heat as well. I'm not entirely sure the entire scientifics behind it, but effectively they could have used white, but they chose not to for safety and longevity and all that kind of stuff, which I guess makes sense. I have no reason to question it. And where is, so yeah, PCI Express, you've got loads of those. Where's the 16 pin? That's the one I'm looking for. Have I unleashed it? Nope, CPU, there we go. So for the new NVIDIA style 16 pin, so this will do up to 600 watts, but it will do excursions of up to 1800 watts, so times 3 excursions, which are part of that specification. And actually there's a reasonable amount of flex on that as well, so no real fear of damaging it too much if you need to have a bit of a dramatic bend on it. And it's nice that they've put the data cable, that's a little bit finer, and that's on the inner edge. So for cable management, it's all going to look very,
What's the length
very
of
pretty.
cables?
These would be 600, I reckon. I need a tape measure. That is, yeah, 600 mil. So nice long cable, 600 mil. The EPS ones for the CPU, the ones that go to the top, they're going to be 650 mil. The main 12 pin or 24 pin is going to be 600. The other cables will be 550 plus an additional 150 for every additional connector. So like SATA cables will be almost a meter in length. I think it's like 950 or something. So 'cause there's 4 plugs on there, so it's 550 plus 150 each time. But yeah, it seems like a very nice show-in. There's definitely a big market these days for white components. And in fact, we had somebody on the Discord today who's building their first PC, and they were deliberately looking for a white graphics card to fit in with their white build, because there's all kind of white stuff going on. I'm not entirely convinced that I like the kind of the white build. It's, I don't know, it is very much a showy thing. I think it was really one of those things that Leanne Lee started off with. They did a really good job on the 0111 when that came out. And then because that gained so much popularity with YouTubers in general, then the whole kind of white PC case thing became a thing. And there's more and more components available out there now. Obviously RGB stuff, even such as the cooler we looked at earlier. The Thermalright Assassin, they do those in white as well now. So even if you're looking for a cheapo CPU cooler, you can get it. We had that John's Bow stuff, which Ugly Bob sent us. The fans, and also so the fans we had, the cooler, even the John's Bow cases and stuff like that. So the whole kind of white PC component market is expanding, there's no doubt about it. And it is gaining popularity.
We prefer it for filming.
For filming purposes, it's great because it's much easier to focus on something which is white. Sorry, headphone users.
Stop talking through it. That's the worst bit. Now you can talk.
Right, I can talk now. William Bodie says, Mike, you like the white builds, they make you look tanned. They do, but the thing is with a white build, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. The trouble is with a white build is that it then takes focus. So when I used to have the black PC in the background, it was more subtle. So it's like, oh look, there's a little bit of RGB in the background. Whereas with white, it emphasizes the RGB massively. And I've noticed it, if I look at old videos from the channel, when we had the white walls, but we had a dark PC, the contrast in the image was much nicer. And I think it personally looked a lot better. Obviously, everyone's got their own opinion on that, but I feel personally it looked nicer. It was a much higher contrast, whereas now I think it looks nice, but it doesn't look quite as sharp. And considering we're using a much more expensive camera than we did back then, it's almost like we've gone backwards, which seems to be a common reoccurring thing in this modern world. Like when we went from CRT monitors to TFTs, and it's like, right, it's flatter, it's squarer, it takes up less room, but it looks bloody awful. Excellent, great upgrade. So yeah, that didn't
You
work
also
out.
asked, what is that PC behind you?
The PC behind me is the Series 500 from Thermaltake. Pretty much most of that stuff in there is Thermaltake, other than the fact it's an AM5 platform. It is the MSI B650 Gaming Edge Wi-Fi, I think. I can't see, the graphics card's in the way. I think it's, no, it's the Edge. It's not Gaming Edge Wi-Fi, it's just the Edge Wi-Fi. B650 Edge Wi-Fi. Yes, Ryzen 5 7700X, Thermaltake D5, Thermaltake ToughRAM XG D5, DDR5 6000, CL36 memory. The cooler is a Thermaltake cooler as well. The only thing which isn't Thermaltake in there is the motherboard, the graphics card, and the capture card. Oh, and the hard drive. Hard drive's not.
So the question is 13 gen or AM5?
So 13th gen or AM5? Yeah. I would... Yes. I honestly don't know. Until I've had some experience with another brand of motherboard on the AM5 platform, I'm going to very much be keeping my options open, because I do like Intel 13th and potentially 14th gen processors. You don't get as much for your money. Where it comes to motherboards, they now are pretty much on parity with each other. Although obviously for AMD, actually this is something I was going to say earlier on when we were talking about processors. For me, the biggest problem with Intel and their entire lineup, chipsets, processors, is the locked nature of the CPU cores. If they turn around and made every single processor unlocked by as default, like AMD has done, and the motherboards allow overclocking, even if it's super basic, like XMP, for the 710 or 810 chipsets, and like with the A620, A520, A320, etc, etc. Yeah, excluding that, but anything over and above the very, very entry level motherboards, if they allowed overclocking on all of them to gain parity with AM5 and AMD and AM4 or whatever, I think Intel would have a much easier time of selling components. Because for me personally, I hate the idea of buying a processor and not being able to overclock it if I want to. I generally don't. In fact, I very rarely do, and mostly I underclock.
Don't pierce the ceiling.
Yeah, but it's the fact that if I'm told that I can't do it, it's a negative. Taking away options is restricting my freedoms, and I don't want my freedoms restricted. So Intel, pull your head out your backside and just let all processors be a K-series SKU. There's no reason not to. You've put thermal limits on them anyway, so there's not really a great deal of overclocking you can do. And actually, I should say as well, as a follow-up, the fact that these days modern overclocking is basically impossible or pointless, it isn't so much of a thing, but there is still that kind of mental stigma, which is like, I'm paying this amount of money for a product. If I want to overclock it, that's my choice, not to have it enforced upon you. I don't like that.
It's a bit like Fitbit though, isn't it, where they want you to pay extra for your data. Clarky Aviation. Mike, what's your favourite non-tech hobby? Are you a coffee snob?
No. I'm so far from a coffee snob, it's untrue. Other hobbies outside of PC stuff, I don't know really. I don't really have the time or a life to have these things you said. I think if I had a hobby, I would quite like table tennis. Ping pong. I think I would quite like to play ping pong.
Oh, the cats would love playing that with you.
They would. If I had the room, I would get a ping pong table. And I think Kath and me would play ping pong.
Bob.
Bob, no. Just no. No, Bob.
Not even a miniature.
Not even a Hello Kitty miniature ping pong set. Because otherwise you'll be putting those ping pong balls where they shouldn't be. Yeah, Gary says there, I want my overclocking freedoms. Exactly. This should be your choice. Like, the processors are locked. There's limitations thermally and electrically what they can and can't do. So why not allow it? You're not going to get much out of it anyway. So it's not as if you're going to be preventing someone buying the next level processor up. That's unlikely because they're quite well segmented these days. Anyway. David Aiken says the Churchills make a banging instant coffee. To be honest with you, it's a very bizarre situation. We buy expensive coffee, but we don't drink it. Some of you will know what that means. Some of you won't. For those that won't, you're probably best off not knowing. But yeah, we drink shit coffee. We really do. In fact, I've got in the cupboard, we have actually got some nice coffee because our daughter buys some. We've had some sent by viewers as well. And yeah, we do have nice coffee here, which we can get the cafetiere out if we want to, or whatever it is, coffee machine. And we can make it, but yeah, it's just time, just chuck some instant in, job done. We don't even drink nice instant. It's like the cheapo Tesco muck. It's horrible.
Probably don't contain any coffee.
Yeah, it's probably got coffee flavouring. Not by beans. Kev2427, if you had £500 to spend on a GPU, what would you choose? That is a very good question. I would probably go for an RTX 4070.
Ugly Bob, AliExpress have ping pong tables.
Oh, for God's
And then
sake.
William says, Ugly Bob, better give George a drum set. We did get
We used to have a
once.
drum set, yeah.
It
Yeah.
lasted about 10 minutes.
Our RTX 4070, I think if you've got £500 to spend, as much as it pains me to say it, and I don't like NVIDIA, I don't like the pricing structure, but on the flip side, you do have to admire what they are able to do on a technological standpoint, and also at what is apparently a very, very nice low power budget. AMD can't touch NVIDIA when it comes to the power budget, especially on the premium products or higher end products. Lower end stuff, they can compete well. And actually, bizarrely, in a laptop, they do a fantastic job. They just cannot get that technology to translate. And I think that the very same thing, like we're saying with the AM4 when that first came out, it didn't quite work. It was a new design topology. They were struggling to get to grips with it. AM5, I feel to some extent the same sort of thing. The whole chiplet design on a new package, not quite executed as well as it potentially could be. Whereas NVIDIA, they've done basically, they've made what was previously a top tier GPU, like a 3080 Ti or 3090, and effectively put it into a kind of 1660 class card, which is this 4070, which it kind of, if you look at it, especially the twin fan models, which use like 200 watts or something, then it's a kind of 1660 class or 2060 class type of card, but it is like a lot of money. So it's hard. It's really hard. But I think DLSS works really well. Ray tracing, obviously, AMD struggle like hell to keep up with that. Rasterization performance arguably is better, but they do hamper it with the memory bus and the memory amount. That is something to also think about. If you've got £500 to spend on a graphics card, a lot of it's going to come down to the resolution you're playing at. If you're playing at 4K, you might prefer to go with an AMD 16 gig card because you've got the extra RAM to play with and potentially a wider bus. 1080p, 1440p, arguably the RX 4070, even though slightly more expensive, I think it's got a slightly richer feature set. And it really, really hurts me to say that because I want AMD to give us what they can, but they're on the back foot. They really are. And this generation has just amplified that, unfortunately. NVIDIA basically don't need to try. They can just release any old stuff and it's just like, yep, we're still kicking your ass. I don't like it. I'm not endorsing it. And I'm not saying NVIDIA are a great company because hell no. No, just no. They're asshats. But it's a good product. And it doesn't use a great deal of energy. What more can you want, really? As much as I hate to put money their way. Alexa says, I think ray tracing is mostly hype. I don't need it or want it. This is going to be the thing now, because AMD are trying to achieve some form of parity in ray tracing performance on their graphics cards. It's going to come down to, oh my god.
I've told him that one's no good because you're left-handed. They're all right-handed.
When it comes to ray tracing, it's going to be a thing. Game developers are going to have to get to the point of, like, do we do path tracing, ray tracing, whatever form of rasterization, whatever they're going to do. If the game design community decides to go down the ray tracing path, then it's kind of almost game over for AMD unless they pull something out of the bag, which is kind of unlikely. So as much as most people don't like it or don't even need it, it is going to become one of those things where if that's the way the whole market is going, you have no choice but to follow it. Ray tracing, I've got to the point where playing games on my monitor, either 4K or 1440p, I often have to check in the settings to see if ray tracing is enabled, which means two things. One, I don't need it, and B, if it is on...
1 and B.
Yeah, 1 and B. I was in that class at school. Yeah, two factors. One, if I don't know it's on or off, then it's not limiting performance because I don't know if it's on or off. But if I can't tell it's on, it doesn't make enough of a difference in terms of lighting to warrant being turned on, if that makes sense. If you looked at two side-by-side images with ray tracing on and ray tracing off, it will take you, I would guess, at least a few seconds to study the image to see the difference. And that is the difference right there. The fact that you have to study the image to see the difference. I know you have to because you have to see it. That sounds stupid, but hopefully you understand what I mean. The fact that it has to be two side-by-side images from the same game at the same place with it turned on or off for you to see the difference means there isn't a big difference. Unlike when 3DFX first came out and you had like your normal 3D games which were in 3D, then you add a 3DFX card and it's like, wow, it was that different. Whereas ray tracing doesn't offer that, unless there are going to be some specific titles which are ray traced optimized, which deliberately look completely different, but on the flip side will also bring your PC to its knees. Now, Minecraft is an obvious example of that. Minecraft on a normal PC runs like an absolute champion with all the eye candy turned right on, hundreds and hundreds of frames per second, but Minecraft RTX, very, very low frame rates, and it looks completely different. So that is like a night and day difference. But in most games, that isn't the case. Especially something new like Fortnite, where you've got the new nanite technology or whatever it is, and all the other bits and pieces you can turn on and off. I generally can't tell if it's on or off, ray tracing and that. Aletta says, in most shooting games you don't have the time to look at any pretty lighting. Yeah, that is very true. Ray tracing works for some titles where it's more like plodding along. Like Starfield is a very good example of what ray tracing could potentially do. Cyberpunk, again, another option because you're basically, it's one of those grind fests where you're just walking around place to place. Whereas if it's got fast action like Fortnite, it kind of doesn't matter because you're focused on what is going on in front of you. The periphery is kind of like, yeah, it doesn't matter what it looks like as long as I can see where someone is trying to shoot me from. Our Ukrainian friend, which I still can't pronounce your name, so I'm not going to attempt to. Like with iPhones, even on the used market, Nvidia will be in more demand. Yeah, that is very true. An iPhone arguably is a more premium product in general than probably 80% of the Android market. The other 20% being taken over by obviously like your Samsungs. I can't even think of another premium Android brand, but I'm sure there are some. But those are the kind of the ones which will be competing, but the rest of the market is kind of well, the majority of the Android market is made up by just cheap, mostly off-brand phones. And that is why they've got such a huge market domination, because they can just throw kind of any old tap together, and yes, it's an Android phone. It's another tick on the box for as another Android sell, whereas Apple don't have that luxury, or they don't really want to go down that route either. O'Reilly says, bring back 3DFX and Voodoo cards to go alongside my GPU. Well, the PhysX cards were kind of good for that. PhysX was quite good, but again, it was one of those things that was like, well, do you actually need it? Does it make a difference atmospherically? Does it change much? Not a great deal. But it would be nice to have, if NVIDIA did a pass-through card, which obviously they've got the technology to do it now, so they do a dedicated RTX card, which would be great, because then AMD owners could buy an AMD graphics card and run everything as they would, but then all the ray tracing will be done by the NVIDIA card. If they made a cheap add-on card for like £100 or so, £200, maybe, no, say £150. I think if they did an NVIDIA RTX standalone card, which supported like the DLSS and all that sort of stuff, as an add-in card, so you can put it with your AMD card, I think they'd sell like hotcakes. Or they would bury AMD alive. Not sure. Sky says, PhysX, yeah, they actually had an add-on card for that. Don't think it sold well. No, it didn't. It sold terribly.
We're talking about technology, but does everyone have 4K monitors?
I don't think many people do have 4K monitors. I think 1440p is probably still somewhat of a premium, but gaining a lot of popularity. 1080p, I think, is going to be the kind of, if you looked at the PC market as a whole, 1080p would have the hugest market share, because you're looking at all kinds of demographics from emerging countries where there's not a lot of money, where 1080p monitors are still going to be expensive. But then you've got the kind of other countries where there's a little bit more prosperity, and you've got your 4K monitors and above. So if you take the whole market into one thing, then 1080p is going to be the strong suit. I would say if you did a survey of PC monitors in the UK, I would say that 1440p is probably going to be the stronger or the more popular choice in general for PC monitors. I would think that 1440p is now outpaced 1080p in the UK for PC enthusiasts, gamers, etc. If you look at the entire market, including businesses, clearly it isn't. This is going to be 1080p for pretty much every business, because they're just going to put a cheap 24-inch screen on a desk and be done with it. But for gamers and enthusiasts, I think 1440p is pretty much the minimum these days. For a primary monitor anyway. Because that's something else you have to take into consideration. Most people will have either a 1440p or higher monitor as their primary, then maybe a 1080p display on the side or secondary monitor. But yeah, 1440p is, without a shadow of a doubt, is the sweet spot for gaming, because it isn't that much harder to run than 1080p, but it is significantly easier to run than 4K. So you get a lot of the benefits of 4K, but without having the increased cost to actually run it at high resolution. Yeah, and with upscalers, like Irene Wolfman says, upscalers will make it look nicer anyway. Seeing what monitors you've got there. Wild Bill's coming in with a translation, thank you. So I don't know if I want to try saying this. So is that basically Alexander? I don't get out much. I'm guessing that would be, it, as an English thing, would be, even though it says Alexander, Yeah, Alexander, that'll do. You're hereby known as Alexander.
So Alexander's asked, oh no, is it? Yeah, has asked, no compromises budget is a computer without a monitor, a computer.
Right, yeah, no compromises budget. The compromise is there isn't a monitor. I did say earlier on in the stream that the price for the PC is the tower itself, because most people who are building a PC or building a new PC will have existing components such as keyboard, monitor, mouse pad, speakers, possibly even a Windows license as well. So I've deliberately left those out of the equation, and also because, like we're discussing here, there's such a wide gamut of use case scenarios. If you're purely gaming at high refresh rate, chances are you're going to get a 1080p 165 or 240 hertz monitor. If you're doing a little bit of everything, you might want to go for like a 27-inch 165 hertz 1440p monitor. Whereas if you're a content creator, then you might want to go for a 4K. So there's so many variables there. So deliberately, those are left out. And of course, when it comes to keyboards and mice, wow, there's a huge market of everything from your cheapo Logitech wireless to top of the range, glorious gaming mouses. What else you got? The Razer Viper Ultimates, etc. So there's a massive gamut. So those are pretty much always left out. Thank you, Ugly Bob. David says that even the consoles run at 1080p or 1440 when 60 FPS. RT mode is enabled 4K, and I'm pretty confident in saying that most consoles, when they're actually in 4K mode, they're still upscaling. Even if it's not from like 1440p, but they are upscaling from something to get to 4K. Mookie MC says I can no longer live without my ultra-wide monitor for productivity. I know where you're coming from. An ultra-wide for productivity is amazing. Adobe Premiere on a widescreen monitor is basically what it was designed to be used on. And even though my monitor is a relatively cheap 4K monitor, it only costs 150 quid, which is the price you'd pay for a reasonable budget 1080p gaming 24-inch screen. So it was a fantastic deal. But even at 4K, video editing, I wish it was widescreen, or ultra widescreen rather. It would be so much nicer. I have got a ultra widescreen monitor in the other room, which I occasionally bust out, but it just does not fit on my desk, which I still need to address because I do miss it. Once you've used the ultra wide, it's really hard not to go back to it unless you've got multiple monitors. Just reading through the chat here. Sorry for the silence. Mookie MC has become a supporter. Thank you for joining.
Renewal.
Is that renewal?
I think so.
Yeah, I think it would because it's on there somewhere.
It's on green.
Ah, yes. Thank you very much, Mookie MC. Much appreciated. So I think pretty much we have wrapped things up. So if there's... we'll give it the 5 or 10 minute warning unless we get a particularly interesting conversation going. So if you have any questions, other than truck fan, now is the time.
Alexander Is that what it was?
Yeah.
M.2 SATA versus M.2 NVMe. When will they add to the labelling that this is NVMe?
When it comes to M.2 SATA versus M.2 NVMe, generally, well, it depends what you mean by labelling. The actual drives themselves, you can look at them physically and see which they are from the little pins on the end. So a SATA-based M.2 drive will always have the B-type pins, so there's 2 notches cut out, whereas a traditional NVMe drive, let's see if I can grab one here. I haven't got any SATA ones here to show you, but if I show you what a NVMe drive looks like and what to look out for. You're making me stand up now, at my age. So, is that going to focus at any point? Come on. Ah, there we go. Right, so if you look at the pins on the end there, you can see the NVMe's have only got 1 notch, whereas a SATA drive would have 2 notches, so there'd be 1 on the other side as well. So from a quick visual, you can see that pretty much straight away. Harder to see from the actual motherboard side of things, but yeah, that's what you're looking for, that little pin on the end. So if there's 1 notch, it's NVMe.
I understand, but why do they write everywhere that this is M.2? Why not call it M.2?
Oh, right, yeah. I understand what you mean, yeah. I agree. The whole reason originally was the fact that drives were designed to be multi-format. So you could have M.2 SATA or M.2 NVMe on every M.2 port. But because M.2 SATA became a bit too slow in comparison with the NVMe alternatives, and it was kind of like, well, we're adding all these features from the chipset which has got limited bandwidth anyway, so essentially M.2 SATA is basically dead and buried because it's more expensive, has considerably less bandwidth, so it has no real advantages in even existing. So really it's just a matter of them being phased out. And I think a lot of manufacturers generally now, if they add M.2 SATA support to their M.2 ports, it's more begrudgingly than it is willingly. And I think most would probably avoid it if at all possible, because it's basically a drawback because you're making a slower connection. But I do agree, it would have been nice to have it sort of M.2 and M.2 Ultra. But then saying that, there's a lot of manufacturers like Asrock who quite happily put the word Ultra on anything which is reasonably fast. So it would be for basically working out which it would be. If they called them B and M, like M.2B for SATA, M.2M for NVMe, that would kind of work because it's a B or an M key. I don't know. But yeah, M.2 SATA is kind of pretty much dead.
William Bodie?
William Bloody, does PDP operate in the UK? I don't think so. I'm not sure who PDP are, so probably not. There's DPD, which is the inverted version of that. I'm not sure if that's what you meant, like a courier. PDP. I'm not sure. I've not heard of them. JB27, how you doing, JB? Says, I like Solidigium. They are the software for my Intel. They are the software for my Intel 660p NVMe. Well, yeah, Solidigium basically bought the Intel NVMe manufacturing and distribution side and then renamed it Solidigium. So Solidigium drives are basically Intel drives. Some of them would have originally been made by Intel, but now they're processed at another plant, as far as I'm aware. William's saying, because they are stable or able to send a care pack but I don't know if they operate in the UK. Yeah, I don't know. I'll look into it. If it's DPD, yes, they do.
Yeah, he didn't. Sorry, I mean DPD. Yeah, DPD do. DPD do.
Yeah, but PDP might be a company in Deutschland.
No, he's like, sorry, I did mean DPD.
Ah, right. Yeah, DPD work here. They're useless, but
Then, isn't that your little friend?
I don't have any friends.
Well, no, there was that one that comes here all the time.
No, that's UPS.
Ah.
He's quite good.
I thought DPD is the brown truck in it, like the American looking truck.
No, brown truck is UPS.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. The DPD is
Isn't that the bloke
the
that
red one.
Used to go into
Yeah,
Man.
he owns the franchise locally, but the local drivers now are pretty useless.
Because I haven't seen him for ages.
Yeah, I think that's what it
Dave
is.
Aiken,
Right, moving on.
James Brock said he's fine, and how are you?
I'm good. Not bad.
Dave Aiken?
David Aiken. Question, Mike, have you ever been tempted to pick up a cheap used MacBook to brush up on the basics and expand your knowledge? Very much so. Yes, I've been deliberating the last week or so, or maybe longer than that, but more so the last week or so, on actually getting a Mac Mini with the M.2 or M.1 chip. But Apple are bastards, they really are, because the standard the standard Mac Mini M2 is 8 gigs of RAM and a 256 gig hard drive, which is fine because you can just plug in an external drive, but you can't change the drive size or the RAM. It is all soldered on a board, never ever to be changed. So it's quite an investment.
But is it like the iPhone? If you don't use the cloud, they won't let you take stuff off it?
Don't know. Yes, you can plug in. It's just a computer, basically. Works in the same way. So, yeah, so it's one of those things that I really want to do that because I do want to get into using OS X and doing some content based on that and to brush up on skills. Because people ask the same stuff all the time. How do I do this? Have you got a Mac version, like for virus removal and stuff like that? Because yes, believe it or not, they do get viruses and they do have things go wrong with them. So yes, I would like to do that, but they are, it's prohibitively expensive because you look at the base level ones and you think, well, that's okay, but maybe I should have a 16 gig RAM. Then it's like an extra £100 for 16 gigs of RAM over than 8 gigs. And it's like, why am I paying £100 for 8 gigs of RAM? That seems expensive by anyone's standard. And the fact that it's locked down so you can't do it yourself, or at least without having some seriously good soldering skills, it's bad. So if I could get a cheap Mac Mini M1, an older one, like a used one for a couple of £100, that I think would be the better option. But then I think if I bought that, I'd then be thinking, this is really good. I wonder how much better the M.2 version would be. Oh, sorry, the M2 version. But I think I probably would. I would like to use one. I've always quite liked the Mac ethos of the operating system because it's quite a locked-in thing. So it kind of, this is the operating system, this is how you use it, this is how it works. Which for some people, if they're not used to computers, is actually brilliant. It's for people who are enthusiasts who use Windows and are so used to tweaking it to your heart's content that you get into it like, well, how do I use this? This is just completely alien.
Well,
So yeah, I would. Well, Linux is basically Mac OS because Mac OS X is based on Linux, basically, sort of.
But it's not private, is it?
Linux isn't, no. But then Linux is awful. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say Linux is awful. Linux is good and it serves a purpose, but because it's so open and like, there used to be a joke that for every computer running Linux, there was a different version of Linux. And there kind of is. There's so many different forks and varieties that they're, yeah, it's a weird and wonderful operating system. And trying to get help with it isn't easy because there are so many versions that they're all slightly different. So at least with Windows, it's like, well, how do I do this in Windows? You can Google it and generally you'll find an answer. Whereas if you've got the same thing with Linux, they'll be like, first of all, okay, which distribution are you using? So immediately there's like probably a good 10 distribution types that are commonly used. So it does get fragmented a little bit.
William Booty.
William Bailey, question: the video on how to install Windows 10, will you do Windows 11? William Booty, question: the video on how to install Windows 11, will you do Win 10 too? I did Windows 10 one ages ago, but the Windows 10 one is essentially the same as the Windows 11. There's very little in between it. The recent one that I've done, I would say, well, I would probably say at this point in time, installing Windows 10 is probably a bad idea. Unless you have a specific reason to do it, I would go with Windows 11 just for the updates and security patches. So yeah, I wouldn't do a Linux one. As much as there is a market for it and there's an interest in it, I personally don't have enough of an interest in it to make it so that I would learn it enough to enable me to then tell other people how to use it. And to be honest, I've seen like one of the people that we kind of started YouTube and we were talking to, Brian from Brightech Computers. He has done a few Linux videos and he's kind of basically stopped doing them to some extent because just the aggro in the comments. Because everyone's got an opinion on which version you should use, how you should use it. Then they ask questions on how to do certain things, and it's like, Linux is designed so that it can be what you want it to be. So people, like on YouTube, if someone asks for help with a Windows thing, it's relatively easy because there's kind of only a few ways you can do most things. Whereas with Linux, you can download all sorts of add-ons and other distributions or modify code to kind of make it do whatever you want. But that requires an awful lot of knowledge, or at least a good grounding in how Linux works, which I don't have, and I don't have the time or the inclination to do that. And I don't think it's a big enough platform to have the amount of viewership that I would want from that kind of content. Because like if you look at the worldwide usage of Linux, it's very, very minimal. And I think even OS X is almost overtaken it, if it hasn't already. So it's kind of like it's like that also ran. It's good and it does what it needs to do for a lot of people, and for servers obviously it's incredible, and most servers are based on that. But for desktop use, I think Windows is by far the leading choice, and I would say OS X is the secondary one. And with the mobiles getting closer and closer in terms of the code base and the way it works, with like the iPad, the iPhone and the Mac all having a very, very similar feel and cohesion to them, I think that would be the one that I would prefer to edge towards.
William Bodie, update Windows 10 to Windows 11 for free or Win 11 from new?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. I don't know. I would probably it's hard to say. If you're going to go to Windows 11 and you've already got a working Windows 10 PC, the thing is, you're in a low-win situation, because if you install Windows 11 on top of a Windows 10 PC, which is seemingly working fine, there's a strong chance that during the upgrade that something could be wrong or mismatched or whatever. So if then that made the system unstable or blue screens or whatever, the immediate reaction is Windows 11 is shit. Look what it's done to my computer. So I would say if you can, go with a fresh installation of Windows 11. and then install your software on it, just in case there's any incompatibilities, which there shouldn't be, because anything that runs on Windows 10 should in theory run on Windows 11. But if you've got some older legacy stuff, which maybe is using maybe Windows 7 drivers or Windows 8.1 drivers, then potentially they might cause problems. So yeah, if you're not comfortable doing fresh installs, I would just say do an upgrade. But if you want the best experience and to start a clean slate with the new operating system, a fresh install is generally going to be the better way to go if you can. And ideally, back up your existing installation before you do it, so if you don't like it, you can just revert back. Hopefully.
So what, you'd buy a Windows 11 key
over
a Windows 10 key?
Well, a Windows 10 key is the same as a Windows 11 key, so if...
Oh, right, okay. So you'd buy
yeah.
a Windows 10, if you had to buy one.
Oh, if I had to buy a license key, I'd buy a Windows 10 one and use it on Windows 11.
And then upgrade to Windows 11, but a fresh.
Well, no, because you could the key would work on both installs straight away. So if you buy a Windows 10 key, Windows 10 Pro, you can install Windows 10 Pro, or you can install Windows 11 Pro. The key will work with both. If you buy a Windows 11 key, that will also activate both. So Windows 10 keys are generally cheaper, so just buy a Windows 10 key. And in fact, if you're installing Windows 11 on the same PC that your Windows 10 license is on, there's a very strong chance that your the hardware kind of key, which is associated to that computer, will activate on a fresh install of Windows 11 anyway. After you've installed your drivers and done a couple of reboots, it will digitally activate because it's the same hardware, effectively. And it'll be like, oh yeah, this is activated, it's fine. So you should be fine. Some do, some don't. But then, for the sake of like $5 for a new key, it's not the end of the world. If you've got the time, then do the upgrade from 10 to 11, and then wipe 11, and reinstall fresh 11. Then you're guaranteed for it to work, key-wise. Michael Craig says, waiting on a new drive before making the jump to Windows from 10 to 11. Glad I did instead of just upgrading. I think doing a fresh install on a new drive is probably the way to go forward. With M.2 drives being as cheap as they are these days, like £35 for a 1TB drive, it's almost to the point where you could buy another drive, install your new Windows operating system on that, take out your old drive, and then if need be, put it into another M.2 slot and use it as storage after you're happy that everything's working as it should. JB27 says, when the time comes, Mike, I'm sending a buddy to your channel to get a code for Windows 11 key. Cool, thank you very much. It's bizarre, to some extent I wish the Windows keys were more expensive, because we make a very small commission on each key. So if they were more expensive, we'd make more money. But then the cheap keys are great, so a very small commission. I think we get 50p.
I don't think we get that. I think it's pence. I think it's, yeah, it's less than that.
Oh yeah, because it's less than 10%, isn't it? So
7.5, I think.
I think it works out about £4.30 a key now when you do the conversion. And I think, yeah, I think we probably get like 20...
7.5%.
I think it's about 20p or something we get. Maybe 25, I don't know. We get a very, very small commission. But every little helps. And if it helps people out, then whatever. I would use them anyway, even if they weren't an affiliate of ours, because I don't want to spend a load of money.
And they always sort any problems so quickly.
They are good. Parody Gamer. I've used Linux for over 10 years now, and I've never looked back. Currently I use the Nabara Linux because it's developed by the people who make the custom Proton compatibility layer on Steam. Yeah, that is a consideration, I suppose, as well. If you are considering going down the Linux path, it's the whole compatibility thing. Whereas it is getting better as time goes on. It's not entirely 100%, but I guess it never will be if it's not running natively. But that is definitely a concern. My Is there, or does Adobe Premiere or any of the Adobe suite run on Linux? I actually don't know. I'm guessing it does. There must be people that use it, but whether or not it needs to be emulated or whether it runs natively, I don't know. Because it's only been very recently that Adobe have, I'm pretty sure they run Photoshop natively now on Mac, whereas it used to be in the kind of Rosetta layer. I think it's Rosetta, whatever it was.
Not Oletta.
William Bodie says, question, but it tells me some apps don't work in Windows 11. That might be the case, depending what the apps are. There will be some which don't like the upgrade, in which case you'd have to uninstall them, then reinstall them after, or get the latest versions of them. Some things won't. The Elgato capture card software won't work in Windows 11 if you're trying to do an upgrade, but if you remove the software, do the upgrade, then install the new version of the Elgato software, it's fine. So you might find there's things like that where it just needs to be removed and then put back on after. Which again, isn't always possible for some people. But I'm sure, what was it? I'm trying to think what there was. There was a couple of programs which said to me, this isn't compatible. I'm trying to think what they were. There was a group of them. Maybe 3 or 4, I think. David Andrews says VIP SCD key. No. Use premiumcdkeys.com /Mike's Unboxing. Much, much cheaper.
Should I just put the link in?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's in our video description anyway.
VIP SCD key. I think their Windows licenses are like $15, which is $10 more than the premium CD keys ones are. I've had this conversation with a few people now, and I am almost getting to the point where I'm going to do a hit piece on other YouTubers that promote Windows keys and, oh, these are cheap. Look how much discount. We can give you 20% discount off this price. It's like, yeah, but they're ridiculously expensive anyway. Stop using them, please. Save money. JB27 says $5.45, something thereabouts, for the USA price. Nice. That's pretty cheap. Mookie MC, behind Mike, one cabinet is marked camera equipment, spelt wrong, and the other streaming. What are the other 2 areas marked as? I want to make sure I'm as efficient if I decide to fly to the UK and burgle. If you burgle this, you'd be wasting your time, because there's absolute shite in there. That one says everything else, because that's other stuff. That one says cables and PSU. So it's power supplies, spare power supply cables, power cables, extension cables. That one is streaming, and that one is camera equipment, but the eagle-eyed will notice that I spelled equipment wrong. But these labels are quite expensive to print, so I didn't do it again, because I'm a cheapskate, as most of you will probably know. Dom's off. Cheers, Dom. JB27 says audio is good tonight, by the way. Yeah, I've not made any changes at all.
I think it was Dom that said that as well.
Yeah, I've not made any changes at all. The only thing I have done is I have the microphone in my shirt again, rather than being clipped on my shirt. So it's a little bit closer to my throat, which maybe that helps. David Anderson says, yes, but I'm an affiliate. Oh, no. Become a premium CD keys affiliate. You'll save yourself and the people money. Don't rip off people. Not that you're doing it intentionally, because you probably don't realise, but yeah. I get at least 1 email a day now from Media AMZ, or Media AMZ, VIP CD keys, and basically there's about 6-7 companies all under the same umbrella. They're all called something slightly different. So there's SCD keys, premium VIP SCD keys, and all kinds. They're basically all the same company, but they're all selling the same keys at inflated prices. But they can afford to do it because they promote them on YouTube, and obviously people who follow the channels are like, oh yeah, I want to support a channel, I'll pay this for a CD key. And that is why they do well, because they're selling them for like 3 times as much.
With the Windows 10 Pro key, do I get Windows 11 Pro?
Yes. Yeah, a Windows 10 Pro key, like all the PCs that I sell, I always sell with Windows 11 on, because I don't want to do Windows 10.
Oh, thank you, Dave.
But I always buy a Windows 10 key to activate it every single time. David Aitken says, please do the shout out to other YouTubers. I comment on Reddit and other YouTube channels almost daily to use your code and premium CD keys. Well, thank you in all respects there. I'm glad that you're passing on the code. And I think I should. I think if I do, but there's a couple of channels that I watch on a relatively regular basis, which I like their channels and I like them as individuals generally. But when I see them ponying off these CD keys, it does make me wonder if they know what they're doing. Whether or not they're doing it from a point of, I can make money on this, or whether they genuinely don't know that they are selling expensive products. So I don't know. So what I think I will do is I will message probably a good maybe 7 to 10 different creators. Send them an email, just say, look, this is what I'm planning to do. Educate people of the practices in the industry. If you get back to me and give me your side of the story before I do the hit piece, then I will include that as part of the video, so as not to just do a what's his name, Gamers Nexus. So I will reach out to them and say, look, this is my plan. I wish to highlight this problem in the industry. Just want your take on it, what your thoughts are, and then see what they come back with. And if they don't reply, then I'll just go for it. If they do reply, then I'll include their replies and what their thoughts are. And hopefully they might see the light, or they might turn around and say, well, I actually quite like working with this company. Yes, it's more expensive, but it's good money and I don't get any problems. If they're honest about it, I don't care. But I still will highlight the fact that even though they're promoting something which technically is a lot cheaper, it's not. Anyway. JB27 says, I mention Mike as much as possible, but find a lot of engineers never heard of him, sadly. I get that all the time. Even in my own village. Nobody knows me.
Oh, you probably thought that was someone beeping at you.
It's quite nice having the anonymity though.
Chris Hartford.
Hello, Chris Hartford.
Creators need to make a living. YouTube money on decline.
Creators, Chris, I do agree, creators do need to make a living, but a lot of the channels which are promoting these expensive keys are also the ones that are also promoting value for money and making the right buying choices in their channels. So that is my kind of angle, that on the one hand they're promoting like XY product is better value than this one because it's cheaper and whatever. This is better value for money, but then doing either the opposite or not knowing their market well enough to promote another product, such as an expensive Windows key. Because I'm sure that most of the people, especially the larger channels, if they've had, or they're promoting these keys, I'm almost 100% sure that in the comments section or in their just emails, there would have been other people commenting saying, did you know you can get keys from XYZ cheaper? Or why do you not use eBay keys, or whatever it is. So I personally think it's them being a little bit greedy. That is my opinion. And if they're doing that, if they're being greedy, but at the same time their channel is promoting value for money tech, there's a conflict of interest there, definitely. Which is why I'm completely happy with premium CD keys, because there isn't a conflict of interest. They are the cheapest keys that I can find reliably that take pretty much any form of payment and have been consistently good. Yes, I can buy keys cheaper off eBay, but of the experience I've had, a few of those have just stopped working for no reason. I haven't had that with premium CD keys, and the prices aren't that much more expensive than the real cheapo ones off eBay. So I have no conflict of interest there, because yes, they aren't the cheapest, but they're the cheapest working ones.
Pearl Rival says, buy the Windows 10 and upgrade to 11 for free. Hopefully that's still an option.
Yeah.
But then, no more than $15 for keys, usually $11. But they're only $5, aren't they?
Yeah, if you go to premiumcdkeys.com/MikesUnboxing and use the discount code MikesUnboxing, you, unless your exchange rate is really weird, you shouldn't pay more than about $5 for a CD key for Windows 10 Pro.
Yeah, I think that, like...
Yeah, eBay keys. I have had some success with eBay keys, to be completely fair, but it's not been consistent. And most of the time, the eBay sellers, they basically get kicked off of eBay after a very short time, because they're normally selling like black market keys. Now, premium CD keys, they may not be 100% genuine keys, but they aren't breaking any laws, because the amount of keys they're selling, even just through us, is incredible. Like, I look at the figures and it's like, bloody hell, that's a lot of keys. And that's just through us. And they're selling keys through many other places as well, and their own kind of promotions, etc. So a company of that size, if they were selling stolen keys or even dodgy keys, Microsoft would have been knocking on their door by now.
And if you,
but they haven't, and they're not.
If you do get a problem, it's almost immediate, isn't it, the response back from them? Because we had one key that didn't work. Within seconds, they're emailing you another key. Ow, your claws are sharp, Flame.
Ira Wolfman says there, yeah. J2 sent us a video out talking about how everything is so expensive and they need to drop prices, except he is not the typical channel for budget builds. Yeah, that irony wasn't lost on me today when I watched that video. I can understand where he's coming from, because the entire PC market is basically dying on its ass, and that obviously anything in the stream trickles down the stream. So if you're at the top of the mountain, it's going to affect you as the same as the bottom of the mountain eventually, because we're all part of the same thing. And if people aren't buying PCs, then obviously everything goes to pot, because sponsorship isn't as strong, because companies aren't making as much money, or they're not having the revenue come through to pay for sponsorships. And yeah, the lack of interest reflects in views as well. We've seen it. Our channel's lost, probably in the last month or two, the views have dropped probably...
Like 7,000?
Yeah, about 7,000 views.
A month. A
month, which isn't massive, but considering we've had all these new product launches recently, you'd think that they would be slightly on the up, and also the back... Maisie! And also the whole back to school thing as well. Normally it's busy time, but it's been actually quieter. So yeah, I can...
You're getting old, aren't you?
I can understand that. Sky says, calling specific YouTubers is probably not the greatest idea. It can create drama and it doesn't need to exist.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I think, I'm not going to...
But if you're doing YouTubers, you are going to create a drama.
The thing is, if I say... that is the trouble. If I say it's YouTubers, then I need to really say who it is, because if I don't, then I offend everybody. But if there's just specifics that I'm aware of, that I watch, and I like the channels, and I like the people, that's what I'm going to say. I'm going to reach out to them first of all and say, look, this is the deal. I'm thinking about making some content on this. What is your stance? and then get some feedback from them and see what the deal is. I would be much happier to do that. If they turn around and say something really shitty, like, well, I don't care. It's like, right, if you don't care, then the viewers have a right to know about this, because clearly you're a dick. The viewers are what makes your channel. That is what pays for your car and your driveway, the roof over your head. So if you don't care for your viewers at all, then they deserve to know that you're just an ass. I think that's fair. That's the way the world works.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be, but I don't like to see people taken advantage of. I've always been...
I get that.
I get into trouble all the time because I do defend the underdog wherever I possibly can. I've done it in pretty much every walk of life that I've ever been in, and it does get me into trouble because I just can't sit by and watch people being taken advantage of. It sucks. It shouldn't happen. I know it's not a perfect world, but it could be better. And if people were highlighted to what goes on, it would give people less room to do this kind of shitty thing to people. I wouldn't like it happening to me. And I'd rather someone told me than be blissfully ignorant. Or maybe ignorance is bliss. Who knows? David Aitken. I've had success with eBay keys, but always have a sweaty crack until they arrive in my inbox. Never trust the process. Not worth it to save a quid. Zero support as the account's gone in 2 weeks. Yeah, that is often the case, that they are just removed from eBay and wherever. David Underhill says premium keys are totally legal. OEM sold to them by Microsoft. I assume that was the case. I can't imagine them getting hold of enough Windows keys to supply the demand if they weren't genuine. And if they were getting them by some dodgy means, I'm sure by now a lot of keys would have been flagged as dodgy.
Since 2018, while I was working at Harvesters, wasn't it?
Yeah, we've been using them for at least 5 years. And you'd expect by now to have at least a handful of complaints.
By them. We were at the beginning, but we've stuck with them because they are good. Reckoner UK. What's wrong, Mabes? Reckoner UK?
I can't even see it.
Quite near the bottom. If they all switch to your provider, won't that hurt your sales? Because everyone is selling at the same price then. Seems like a bad business move.
Well, they're not. That's the thing. I don't really care about the sales of it, to be honest with you. Yeah, it's nice to have a little bit of income from it, but I'd much rather that everybody could have a share of the same pie. Like, I don't think our sales would necessarily go down. And in fact, I think, if anything, they might even go up. Because if more people were highlighted to it, there's a chance that when they do their next install, even if they're watching a Linus video or Gamers Nexus, Tech Yes City, whatever channel they're watching, when it comes to buying a CD key, it might kind of trigger them saying, oh yeah, premium CD keys. And they might do it through our link, or they might remember our discount code. So there's a potential for like possibly more sales, but yes, I could completely lose them all because someone like Linus or Tech Jesus could step in and premium CD keys might turn around and say, actually, it's been nice working with you, but we're going to go with these guys now. And I might get stitched up. But if that happens, that happens.
But then we're not really working with them, are we, as such?
Yeah, we're not working with them. Well, we kind of are.
We were sponsored at the beginning.
Yeah.
But we've stuck with them, even though you get other offers.
Yeah. Rolfman says there is calling out and there is just agreeing with what they've said. Jay has said many things. I agree, but mostly he says PC building is an activity for most having a midlife crisis. Possibly. Reckoner UK might drive the cost if everyone was using them. Again, I don't think they would because, well, if they weren't savvy,
they also do cheap,
they might put up the prices, but then before now they have put the prices up when there's been inflationary measures, and I've actually got in contact with them and I said, is everything okay? Because the prices are going up. And they're like, well, at the moment, we're buying keys and we're buying them in dollars or whatever their currency was that they said at the time. I can't remember exactly. So they said, well, because the exchange rate has fluctuated so dramatically, it's now costing us more because we're going through in euros or whatever it was. And basically the price changed. And when the exchange rates calmed down a little bit, it sort of went back. And I think they're cheaper now than they ever have been. So maybe the exchange rate is working in our favour. So currently it's working well. And also, one of the better things as well, not just the Windows keys, but the Office keys. Because buying Microsoft Office is horrendous. Like, if you subscribe to Office 365, you're looking at 80 quid a year, at least. Whereas they're actually selling Office 2022, I think, or 2021, the standalone version, for some reason about $13, $15 max. So that is really good. If you want to use Excel, PowerPoint, Publisher, Outlook, all those things, you can get that really cheaply, although it is a one-time deal. So you can only install it on the PC you're actually on. If you uninstall it, it's unlikely you're going to be able to recover it again. So it is like a one-shot OEM deal. It's not a retail version. So do bear that in mind if you are thinking about it. But if you're in a household where there's like 4 or 5 of you using a PC and you all have to use Office or Outlook, it's actually cheaper to buy it as like a one-time deal for everybody than subscribe to it yearly.
Hey, Bobby Dora.
Hello, Mabes. Alexander says there are keys for home use and there are keys for business use. If for business, office, etc., there may be consequences. I think there is, yeah, for some businesses, if you get to a certain size of employees, I think you do have different regulations. I think it's like over 50 employees or something. You have to go through bulk licensing. Well, you don't have to, but it makes sense to. But I think for like, we use the Office keys, or have used the Office keys here, and the Windows keys, and we register them. They're on the books as being for the business, and well, we've registered it. It's being used. If Microsoft or whatever want to say, well, that's not designed for business use, I bought a key. It works. You've taken my money. I've agreed to the licensing. If you don't want it to work, you stop it working. It's not my problem. I've done everything within my power to understand the 75-page document of licensing, which makes no sense to me at all. Put it in plain English, and I'll quite happily abide by it, or I will interpret it as I see fit. Hugh Luttrell says, hi all, I was wondering how many are getting a Trojan through Office 365. There was, I believe, something recently, I think I saw on Bleeping Computer about something in Office 365. I don't think it's through Office 365. I think it is through something emulating Office 365. So it looks like it, and it's like a redirection. But I have heard something along those lines this week. Or was it last week? I don't know.
Advent Avenger, is this still going on? There isn't even a case opened. We building PCs?
No, we're not building a PC. We were discussing a build which I will be putting together at some point and highlighting the pros and cons of said build. But now we've just gone off onto a tangent onto Windows keys.
Glenn's off.
Cheers, Glenn. Night, mate. Yeah, Skystalker is pretty much wrapped up there. Because of the standard, it is down to the standard. If you work in an office environment and you go in and you're working for a company and they sit you in front of like open office or something, your immediate reaction is, this is not what I learned in college, or this is not what I've been taught, this looks different. And it is I guess for some people as well, it's that convenience factor. Like OpenOffice and the other clones of Office software, yes, they work and they get the job done, but when it comes to, like, the reason you're making a document generally is because you're transmitting it somewhere. It's rare these days, I would argue, that if you're creating a document, you're doing it purely to print out and stick on your wall at home. Now, you might be doing that, making the calendar or making a list of stuff for the kids, cleaning chore rotas, whatever. It's very possible that might be what you're doing. But the reality is, for most people, if you're having to use an Office suite of software, be it Excel, Word, or even just using Outlook, you are using that because you're transmitting information. And the compatibility thing is massive. Now, even on a very, very small scale, when I was working for the BBC and we were holding job applications and people were sending in their CVs, you could tell which ones were done in Word and Excel and ones which were done in like OpenOffice and stuff, because the formatting was not as you'd expect. Because if you're in a business, you're generally going to be opening your documents in Word or Excel or PowerPoint or whatever it is, because that is the Office standard these days. So if you don't adhere to it, there is the possibility of your document not looking as it should do, or not having its original formatting, which then potentially shows, I wouldn't say a level of professionalism, but it kind of does. Because if you are in a professional environment, you're expected to be using professional tools, including your choice of software, which may piss people off. It's just the way life is. Like with video editing, if you are a video editor, realistically, there's only a few real choices in terms of what you'll be using, like Adobe Premiere, possibly Resolve, and maybe like the Apple version. But those are kind of it. So if you go in and you've done your stuff in Camtasia Studio or something, it's going to be like, okay, what is this? So there is expectations when it comes to software, especially in the kind of more business-orientated environments.
Right, it's 5 to midnight.
Yes, I know.
That donkey's got no legs left.
Mookie MC says WordPerfect is what all the cool kids use. I actually agree. I think it would be much nicer if there was a proper open standard, which was open and was standard, but there isn't, unfortunately. You can get other software which has the ability to open and close these programs or create them, but the compatibility is generally not 100% perfect. And I found that out to my, not to my expense, but I suppose it was my expense because it cost me time and money and actually redoing things. So when I worked for the BBC, we had PowerPoint presentations on monitors as displays, and the idea was you press a key and it went and it showed a different screen. Now I set these up absolutely perfectly using OpenOffice or LibreOffice, I think it was at the time, and yeah, it worked fine. I took it to the computers on the set, which had PowerPoint Viewer from Microsoft installed, and straight away they started misbehaving and things weren't lined up or they didn't work as intended. So I had to go back and redo it again in the Microsoft version to make it work. Now I could have gone in each PC, installed LibreOffice on each one of the work on the desktops, but it's like, well, I'm just fighting a losing battle because there's still going to be some other PC somewhere which is using an Office. So anyway.
It's 5 to 1 in William Bode's country.
Oh my days. David Aiken says, same in any industry, yeah. If your tradesperson turned up at the house with little tools, you'd judge them. I think so. Alexander, I don't think you're allowed to say that these days. I think that's one of those frowned upon terms in modern society. But if you're translating from another language, we get what you mean. Ivory Wolfman says latest version of Windows 11 beta, remove WordPad because money? I don't think it is. I think it's because Notepad is basically as powerful now as WordPad, isn't it? Or didn't they replace it with something else altogether? Oh, I know what it is. Yeah, you can, because you can use Word for free online. So you don't need to have WordPad because you've basically got the online version of Word, which is more powerful, free of charge. Right, what else have we got? Oh dear. Mookie MC, a few months ago we got a resume from someone using a dot matrix printer on continuous tractor fed paper and they did not even tear off the bits with the holes in it. Wow. That's cool.
I love ripping those bits off.
Did I miss something there?
What's that?
I know it's right now. It's all right. Just checking. Right. Okie doke. I think that is pretty much it. Yeah, I think so. I've gone way over. That was my 5-minute warning. Went on to like 40 minutes. But anyway, I do appreciate it. And even though there's not that many of you in the chat, we don't do it for the views, obviously. Clearly. Because if we did, we'd do it at a sensible time of the day. But hopefully you've enjoyed it. So if you're still here and you're in the chat and you haven't clicked on the like button, we're currently at 96 likes. Let's just get it up to 100, please, just to make these last 4 hours seem like I've actually done something constructive with my life. Please do it. Because I am going to have to sleep. There we go, 97, 99. You can go over 100. It's all good for the stats. Right, it's gone over 100. I'm happy with that. My life is now complete. Thank you all very much. I should also say as well, thank you very much for the super chats and just your general interactions. It's and membership renewals as well, of course. You've all been fantastic. And yeah, I'm sorry that I've just been rabbiting on for ages. I've actually got a really sore throat now as well. So I should have stopped ages ago. But I like it. It's when there's actually something to talk about or that you guys are interested in, it's nice to just hang out and have a chat with you guys and kind of wind down my week. Even though my week is just kind of beginning tomorrow. But regardless, have a fantastic time. So yeah, to recap, new PC is probably a bad idea at the moment. Older PCs probably has more value. Windows CD keys and Office keys can be very expensive, so don't get mugged off by other sellers and channels, etc. Naming no names.
Check out the prices. Don't believe us on anything.
Yeah, if you don't believe us, check out the prices at premiumcdkeys.com. Put in the discount code Mike's Unboxing. You don't get a lot of discount, but then it's not expensive to start with. So discount is minuscule, but every little helps.
7.5.
Anyway. Yes. 7.5, I think it's 5%.
It's 7.5%.
Oh, 7.5 is it? Okay, thank you. Anyway, massive shout out to everybody in the chat. Colin Hilton, hopefully you're feeling better soon. And who else was it who said they were sick at the very beginning? I can't remember who it was now. Was it Truck Fan? No.
I think it might have been.
Might have been. Anyway, if you're feeling unwell, hopefully you all feel better. Hopefully you've all smashed that like button. It looks like you have. I can't see what it says now. It's just got the digits covering over the top of it, so I can't tell. Anyway, regardless, I'm withdrawn. Hopefully you've enjoyed the stream. If you have, smash the like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. If you want to help support us, you can do through likes of Patreon and whatever, and super chats, all that kind of nonsense. So that is very helpful. It's not necessary, but we are extremely grateful to anyone who does. We will probably be doing the Mike's Unboxing beanies again this year at some point, so kind of gauging interest. I might even change the logo on them as well, possibly, but we'll see. Yeah, I think that's going to be it. Hopefully you've enjoyed the show. If you have, I've done that bit already. See, brain has stopped working now. I think I'm going to wrap things up. Thanks for watching, guys and girls, and those on the fence on the whole situation. Hopefully we'll catch up with you again next week, and don't forget, all videos through the week released midnight UK time. Not sure what that's going to be around the world. There is some very cool videos coming out this week, so do pay close attention and make sure you smash the like button. It helps, apparently, allegedly. Anyway, moving on. Hopefully, we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. I keep on saying shit. What's the matter with me? My brain has gone to jello. Click on end stream. Don't forget, buy cheap CD keys. From us. Not eBay. See you all. Cheerio. Oh, and sorry, Poppy.